Okay, I'll call this special Board of Selectmen meeting to order for August 12th, 2019. We're starting at 6:35. Everyone's here. First order of business is to discuss and approve a resolution in support of the Connecticut Jobs and Revenue Act. And I'll pass that out. I think it was in your packet, though.
It wasn't in mine.
It was? Okay.
It was not.
And we're going to pass it out.
You got them down here.
Oh, it's not one that was sent to me, I guess it's the second.
How are you guys today?
Okay, this was sent to me early in the week by Dr. Saud Anwar, Senator, and he wanted us to support the jobs, Connecticut Jobs and Revenue Act. And this is an act that's been put forward by, well, as it says, bipartisan, but the primary, or one primary person is Kathy Ostin. And in the paper, there's been a lot. Governor Lamont came out with an idea to not put a casino here in East Windsor and put one in Bridgeport and do something with the Civic Center. The tribal nations don't support that at all, and Kathy Ostin put forth this bill that would create a casino here in East Windsor. So I'll read it, and then we can vote on whether we want to support it or not, but I would like you to sign it tonight if we vote to support it. Resolution in support of the Connecticut Jobs and Revenue Act. Whereas the Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan tribes have been long-standing, trusted, good partners to the state of Connecticut, contributing at least $8 billion in state revenue since inception, and their respective business operations, much of which have gone directly to support cities and towns through municipal grants. Whereas the tribes and their gaming enterprises rank among the top 10 employers in the state of Connecticut, supporting 18,000 jobs. This incorporates gaming partners, tribal, and more than 7 million in payroll and benefits annually, whereas the Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun are major economic drivers of tourism in the region and standard bearers for gaming on the East Coast, whereas Connecticut's gaming market has been directly targeted by out-of-state casinos, magnates, and neighboring states who want to pilfer Connecticut jobs and revenue, whereas Connecticut has already acted to protect its economic interest by authorizing development of MMCT joint venture Tribal Winds Casino in East Windsor, whereas Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun are verified and trusted brands both nationally and internationally, whereas we recognize the tribe's success directly correlates to Connecticut's success given the lucrative revenue sharing compacts in place, whereas we respect and honor the decades-old compact agreements signed between the state of Connecticut and the sovereign tribal nations of Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan, then be it hereby resolved that the Board of Selectmen, Town of East Windsor, calls on the Connecticut General Assembly and Governor to adopt in special session the Connecticut Jobs and Revenue Act, providing modernization to the state's gaming laws and protection of our state's economic interests. Is there any discussion?
This was prepared by
This was
somebody in the legislature?
Yeah, this was sent to me by, like I said, Senator Anwar, and he'd like us to pass this resolution, and I'll send it back to him.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Did somebody move it and second it?
No. I'll take a motion.
I would move the foregoing resolution.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Good.
How do you want to sign it now?
Well, I have it right here, so I'll pass it down the table. And I have a pen. This is my signing pen. Give it back. Cost the town $3 if you need it.
Can I have a signing pen? Must be important to do this.
Who wrote this song?
I don't know. Someone in the state legislature was sent to me by Senator Arnwall. So. Okay. Pass that down too.
Okay.
And I have a letter here, so we can go on to agenda item number 2, which is,
You mean four?
I probably need 4. I don't have my agenda in front of me. Okay. 4, discussion of Tribal Winds Casino. And I have a letter now to Governor Lamont that we can send, and I'd like to send that too. But before I read that and pass it out, is there anything anybody wants to say about the casino?
The last time I talked to Dave Capiello, he was very emphatic about the fact that the Indian nations were going to go forward with the casino here in East Windsor. And it appears as if, from the papers and the media, that continues to be their position.
It seems to, yeah.
I just wondered whether it would, and Dave has been a good source of information, and I know you have other connections with the tribes. I just kind of wonder whether you or the board altogether should go down and talk to Chairman Butler. You know, I think that if we were East Hartford or Hartford, they would do that. And I wonder whether that'd be a proper thing to do. Go down to him and say, hey, look, what can we do to help? I ask that of Dave all the time, and he says, well, we'll let you know when we need your help. But I think it's appropriate for at least you to go down and talk to Chairman Butler. I'm sure he would be more than willing to do that, or take the whole board and go down to show that we are united in our belief in what they're doing, and that we really do support them. Personal opinion, like I said, as I started, is that it is something that larger cities would have done, and would be in touch with him. Not that Dave and other people that you deal with aren't good sources of information, but he's a decision maker.
I agree with what you're saying, although I don't know if it's necessary to go to talk to Rodney Butler. I think, but it is good to have that communication, and in a sense I do, and I can call him if that's what's necessary, but I don't think it is. I think with these 2 documents that we're presenting today, the next step, and in fact I have a letter here to the governor, And I'm going to copy in our representatives, Chris Davis, Carol Hall, and Senator Anwar. And so we'll start our congressional delegation moving. And I'll talk to Kathy Osted and see what we can do to help in the legislature. And in fact, also, this letter to the governor was prompted by David Cappiello, and then I got in contact with Andrew Doba, who is a spokesperson for the tribal nations, and he helped me write it. I gave him a start, and he finished it, and he did a good job. So I'm going to pass the letter out now, unless there's somebody else who wants to talk about the casino. Go ahead.
You know, when I read the paper about what Lamont wanted to give them, Bridgeport wanted to hand them the rundown civic center, giving them everything. I thought we had lost them. I really did at that point. I thought these guys were going to jump on that. And then I got an email, I don't know if you guys got it too, saying they're not budging. They don't want Bridgeport because it's going to dig into their casinos out there. It's going to stop the traffic going over. They want them to take the rundown XL Center.
Which needs $250 million.
Yeah, please, Jason. Okay. They want them to take the rundown XL Center. That way they would vamp it up. And now the city really, I guess, is on the verge of bankruptcy. Would have a hell of a revenue coming in on taxes. That's what that was about. Okay? And they turned them down. And I said, boy, I can't believe this. But they said they were obligated to East Windsor. And the email that I got, I think, oh, you must have got the same thing.
Steve, one of the things that surprised me is that I talked to David probably 2 weeks ago, and I said that the sports betting is a big plum that the state's hanging out there. And he said, Andy, the East Windsor Casino, he said, we believe it will make more money for us than the sports betting. And I was surprised by that, and he didn't elaborate, and so I don't know any facts to support that. But I was surprised that he thought that the East Windsor Casino had more potential for profit and revenue than sports betting.
In terms of next steps and strategy, the most appropriate thing to do would be what you're about to hand out, which is to be the pressure, the executive branch. The legislature has already passed the legislation that needs to move forward with this. The tribes don't seem to be wavering, at least publicly, in their support for the project. But every time you read a news story, it's coming out of the executive branch trying to move the project to somewhere else, whether it's down in Bridgeport or in Hartford or wherever. I think we need to push back hard and let them know that we were selected for a reason, and that reason hasn't changed. No matter how you slice it, Bridgeport is not between Hartford and Springfield and on I-91. That was the deciding factor. That's why East Hartford, as often as they tried to twist the map, couldn't make themselves north of Hartford on I-91. The pluses that we had going, we still have going. It still serves to not bastardize the casino revenue going into southeastern Connecticut, but capture some of that that's leaving the state. We need to push back however we can on the executive branch that this has been a done deal and that it's the 11th hour and it's not time to start upsetting the apple cart.
Well said. Go ahead.
I think also a name that wasn't mentioned would be John Larson, from
Okay.
his capacity to put, some pressure there. And I'll be glad to reach out to John and talk to him about that.
Yeah.
He gets involved with most things in his district, so I think we should leverage
Okay.
his weight.
Sounds good. Okay, I'll pass out the letter to the governor. and I'll read it. It says, regarding Connecticut Jobs and Revenue Act, Tribal Winds Casino. Dear Governor Lamont, Monday night, August 12th, 2019, the East Windsor Board of Selectmen voted on a resolution supporting the Connecticut Jobs and Revenue Act, CJRA, a bipartisan piece of legislation that supports in both the House, that has support in both the House and the Senate. We believe that this bill will make the state's gaming industry more competitive with our neighboring states, create jobs, and keep more of our revenue right here in Connecticut where it belongs. The other important aspect of this bill is that it does not pit Connecticut communities against each other. When the reports in the media say you want the tribes to scrap their plans for East Windsor, it raises grave concerns in our community. The Tribal Winds facility is going to generate $8.5 million annually for the town of East Windsor and employ a significant number of local residents. They are also going to send millions of dollars in annual payments to neighboring communities, money that will improve the overall quality of life throughout the entire region. At a minimum, we should all agree that walking away from the Tribal Winds project does not serve Connecticut's best interest. In fact, the only entity that benefits is MGM. Creating facilities in both East Windsor and Bridgeport, in addition to other entertainment zones throughout the CJRA, will allow our tribal partners to invest in different parts of the state to help shore up an industry that's spent more than $8 billion to the state over the last years. Abraham Lincoln said in 1858, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," and we believe that as a state, we must work together. Now is the time to build the Tribal Winds Casino, while at the same time create investment opportunities that will revitalize cities like Bridgeport. We urge you to join us. And again, it has places for your signatures.
Are you going to add John Larson to that?
We
Is
could.
that possible? Yeah.
We'll add John Larson.
It's not likely Larson picks East Windsor over Hartford. So this is a good thing to do, but I do have some concerns about pointing towards Bridgeport. I think from the town of East Windsor, we ought to be talking about, and you do largely do that, we ought to be talking about how East Windsor is the appropriate place for this facility.
Okay.
Let somebody else figure out the Bridgeport stuff.
Okay.
I think if we start weighing in support of a casino in East Windsor and one in Bridgeport, then the conversation quickly becomes putting one in Bridgeport. So I'd like to take out the references to Bridgeport in the last paragraph on the first page and this last paragraph overall.
Okay.
Otherwise, I appreciate the sentiment. I think it's right where we need to be, but I don't want to be supporting a project in another community.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. So what that will mean, we can send this letter out Thursday night.
Yep.
Yeah, we could sign it and we'll change it. Okay, so that's what we'll do.
Could add Larson also.
I'm not sure. Jason thinks we probably shouldn't, but,
I don't think we shouldn't. I just don't think it's going to help.
okay, well then we'll add it. Okay, so, very good. Now, moving on to number 5, discussion of an approval charter revision questions. Another thing I'd like to pass out is my own guide here, and it's confusing. Well, not that confusing.
Bob, I just marked up the last letter.
Okay, great. Okay, does everybody have a copy of the proposed draft questions that were given to us by the Charter Revision Commission? I have some extras.
Do you have extras for the public?
Well, possibly. Does everybody have attachment D?
D, yeah.
See, what does attachment D look like?
It's just a one-page, well,
Two
it's
pages.
12 questions.
At the very end of that package.
Can I make other copies?
Yes, you may.
Is that it? That's the whole thing?
That's the whole thing, both sides.
What's D? Did you say there's attachment D?
That is attachment D.
This is,
Okay,
I'm just glad you're doing it.
does everybody have attachment D? Does somebody not have it? All right.
You gonna have to hear from?
Huh?
You gonna have to do that?
thanks.
Okay, what we're gonna do is follow my guide, and then we'll see where it takes us. Okay, now, if you read the top of the guide, it says suggested order and wording. The first number is the number of attachment D. So the first number, 12, is attachment D. Do you have attachment D?
No.
Okay. So, in attachment D, number 12 is on the last page, the last one. It says, shall the charter be amended to make certain technical changes regarding specific references to the Connecticut General Statutes within the charter and change the title of the town treasurer to finance director in Charter Section 6-D as outlined in the Charter Commission final report. That's what was given to us by the commission. I think that's two questions, really. One about the town treasurer and one about the Connecticut General Statute. So I would divide it into two. So the first number is just the number on attachment D, which in this case is 12. The second number, who can guess what the second number is?
Is it also 12?
No, the second number is 1. It's been in parentheses.
And that's your
That's the order
proposed
you want to
order?
put them in.
Yes. Jason got it.
That's your proposed order?
Yes, and it's also the order in which they're on this page. And the final number, which is 12 also, which is in red, is the number that's in attachment B. So if you want to go to attachment B and see what it looks like in the changes to the charter, you can actually, in attachment B are the changes to the charter, so you can look there too if you want to go that far.
What is attachment C?
Attachment C is the entire charter with the changes in it.
Okay.
It's 50-something pages. Okay, so in parentheses 1 is has to do with specifying Connecticut General Statutes numbers, and I've shortened the sentence, the question that would be on the ballot to, shall the charter be amended to include specific Connecticut General Statute numbers when referencing a Connecticut General Statute? That's the wording I think should be on the ballot.
Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, and it would be on, you should
It's
have
on
this
here.
on the guide.
Okay. All right.
So it says, shall the charter be amended to include specific Connecticut general statute numbers when referencing a Connecticut general statute?
And you're saying that should be what? What number?
The first one.
Number one.
Number
Figure
one.
the easy ones first.
A comment, Bob.
Sure.
I think that we're going to have 13 or 14,
13.
over 10
Yes.
items in the referendum. I really think that the priority should be the ones that we think are the most important to the town, because as people go through it, they may tire and not look at the last ones very much, or not even indicate yes or no. And my personal opinion is, although that's a good thing, it doesn't meet the criteria of being the most important issue that we're going to put forward.
I agree with all of what you said, except that I think it should go from simplest to hardest, or the simple ones first, so people don't get tired. And I think that that's a pretty, I think most people would agree that if you read a Connecticut general statute, you want to know what number you're reading, because the Connecticut general statutes are a book of volumes, a book this big. Yes, Jim?
Before we go any further, I think you had committed to reading some correspondence pertaining to the charter questions.
I did.
So before we make decisions and then read about what the correspondence we actually heard from voters was, we should probably listen to what the voters said.
I agree with what you're saying.
And there were 4 of them.
Well, okay, I only have one, but I will read the others if, is one of them Paul Anderson's?
It's Jack Manette, Joel Whalen, Kathy Parakiwas, and Paul Anderson.
And is Paul Anderson's the one that is on Facebook?
I don't know what he put on Facebook. He sent us a distribution email to our town email accounts on
Yeah,
August 8th.
I don't think I'll read the ones that are on Facebook, so.
None of these are Facebook oriented, they're all email.
They're all email, but I've read Paul's on Facebook too. And I have a response. I was going to send you a response, but once I saw it on Facebook, I didn't. So
So if you put something on Facebook, it disqualifies everything else you do? Is that what you're saying?
No, but
Well, good, okay, fine, we'll pass that.
well, I would have brought it, Paul.
Excuse me?
If I didn't read it on Facebook, I would have brought it with me. And I didn't read Jim, all right.
If you got correspondence, you should be reviewing that with the board, regardless of what else has happened with it.
Thank you very much.
So, I'm just throwing this out there. These are significant changes that we're talking about. And we do hear back from our constituents about what their thoughts and concerns were. We ought to consider those. And we ought to have those.
I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm disagreeing with is people talking out from the audience.
I'd be happy to read them if you'd like.
I can read one because I did bring it. That was the one that I said that I would read.
Okay.
Please reject the charter revision as presented to you this month. We are not in favor of many aspects of the charter revision and ask that you vote no changes to the existing East Windsor charter. Upon review of the charter revision, final recommendations dated 7/12/19, we strongly disagree with the Board of Selectmen recommendations to delete section 1010, power to overrule. We do not agree with the recommended changes to the following. Section 6-1I, Police Department Chief, specifically not limited to the removal of the chief responsibilities. Section 7-7, Police Commission. Section 8-9, requirement for operation and financial audits. Specifically changed the 4 to 6 years with regards to town department audits. We strongly feel the audit should be performed every 4 years. We ask that our letter is shared with the next Board of Selectmen meeting, and they have the wrong date. Please acknowledge receipt of this letter via email. Thank you for your cooperation. So that's one of them. And the others.
The second one?
From,
That was from Kathleen and Mitchell Hillis.
The second one was dated July 28th. It speaks to 4 provisions of the recommendations. Number 1, and I'm reading this verbatim. Number 1, Finance Director. In any organization, job titles have significance when it comes to perceived duties and authority. To prevent any misunderstanding as to what authority our current treasurer has, you could change Finance Director to Chief Financial Officer/Treasurer. This change will help with recruiting in the future while not misleading as to the actual duties of the job. Also, using officer makes it consistent with the proposed administrative officer title. Other town charters, by changing the treasurer's job title, do so by adding the Board of Education financial responsibilities to the position. As an example, see Canton's charter and their municipal and school district finance and payroll consolidation feasibility study. I believe that Canton eliminated their Board of Education financial director position by this consolidation, thus reducing this and other administrative costs by over $113,000. This could be our justification to upgrade our treasurer's position. Number 2, administrative officer.
Excuse me, Jason.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
It's Jack Manette. Number 2, the minimum qualifications stated for this new position could, coupled with being responsible for the day-to-day operations of all town departments, will demand a salary commensurate with the job requirements. If you're concerned, CCM can provide a summary of average salaries associated with such a position. Not having the authority to execute the day-to-day responsibilities will render this position with the stated minimum qualifications nothing more than a high-cost clerk. Per the charter, all the department heads currently report to the first selectman. Do you really think that they will take day-to-day directions from someone without any authority? I have talked to many folks, and I haven't heard anyone that would agree to have someone manage the town without any authority. Political and/or individual bias through the first select person or department head could render this position useless. Number 3, police department. Stating that the police department will be a town department seems to be the right thing to do. This will clarify the PD and the town's organizational structure. However, if a town administrator as proposed is approved, that would mean the police department day-to-day responsibilities could be included. Towns with a town administrator include the police department by making the position also the public safety director. Not doing this risks another fracture in the organizational authority structure. Having the police commission responsible for the appointing and removal of the police chief, but having the board of selectmen responsible for the term of employment could be a disaster by again splitting the organizational authority structure. It's not clear who the police chief reports to. As a department head, this needs to be made clear in the town organizational chart. Number 4, rules for expenditures and bidding supplementary appropriations. Adding this section does not recognize that the town currently has purchasing and other financial policies in place. Why get the charter involved in the day-to-day details that may contradict those policies? Currently, it's up to the treasurer and the finance board to ensure that these policies are being followed. That was Jack Manette on July 28th. On July 29th, Joel Whalen wrote, "Good evening. I was just listening," and you'll like this one, Steve, you're going to shout out. "I was just listening to the opening of the charter meeting and have to ask where the additional funds will come from for the mail lawn that you proposed." I'm reading this verbatim also. "I do not recall that CRC having that as a line item in the most recent budget that was passed, to remind you, at a 2% over last year's budget. I also have to agree with Mr. Dearborn in that the information should be out there and is consumable in many different avenues for the varied populations in town. I know it's late in the process, but something that Mr. Yagelov said about people wanting to hear things in words mirrors a comment and request that I have been making of the commission from the start, is that all meetings should have been televised and recorded, but until this meeting, that seemed to fall on deaf ears. Thank you for your time, Joel Whalen." And the last one is Paul Anderson's, which was from August 8th. Paul's here, he could read his own, or I could read it for him. I gotta find August 8th. Do you have a preference?
I don't have any.
From Paul Anderson on August 8th. "I think the charter revision has become unwieldy. There are too many questions. The average person is going to have a problem understanding the long-term implications of the changes. Many items are dependent on other items, so they must all pass to work. The ballot can only hold some limited number of questions. The suggested revisions place too much power in one branch. Many items can be accomplished without being in the charter. Items in the charter must do things without much discretion. I suggest we stop now and try again later with a new charter revision commission. Those are all public correspondences that we got pertaining to survey multiplication. Pertaining to this.
True.
If I don't believe I missed any, but if I did, we should entertain those as well.
If we continue to do that, people are going to overwhelm us with letters to be read. I don't want to spend our time answering those letters. Maybe at some point we will decide to do that. But let me answer Paul's. Let's go through that letter. First one.
You want me to do, I'll give you point by point?
Yeah, it's sentence by sentence.
1 second. There are too many questions.
Okay, there's 13 questions. Next.
The average person is going to have a problem understanding the long-term implications of the changes.
Okay, I'm not going to, and I'm not going to base my decisions on what I think the average person is going to think long-term. I'm not going to base my opinions on what I believe average people are going to think. Third.
Many items are dependent on other items, so they must all pass in order to work.
I disagree with that. So as we go through the 13, if you can find one item that depends on another, please let me know, because that's a charter, when we started this charter thing, that's a charge we gave them. They all have to be independent. Go to the next sentence.
The ballot can only hold some limited number of questions.
That is true. I have a ballot here from Simsbury, and I pass it out. I just send it down. This is Simsbury's ballot. It's on bigger paper than I should have printed it on. But it's got, you can use both sides. So they have 14 questions. So that's false.
I think that's not false.
Okay.
The registrar has been pretty vocal at previous meetings about
And that's true. He has been vocal.
It's my understanding that it's the town clerk's responsibility.
Yeah, in
to
fact,
do
what
that.
we did is the town clerk will get the questions and also the people who are on the ballot, and she sends it to a publishing company who actually produces the ballot. And if he says it'll work, it'll work, and that's what we're going to do.
If it's worked, if it's worked in other towns, I don't know why it would not work here.
And
They
we'll
haven't put 13 questions on it. How many did Simsbury put?
14,
They put 14, in what year? What election?
2015
So it was a municipal
municipal
first
election.
selectman or not first selectman year?
The first selectman here.
Easier question. How many elected positions were on there?
In fact, I'll pass it out. I'm going for everybody. Here. 34.
34?
34.
No, that must be total candidates. That can't be number of rows.
No, there's 4 rows.
No, there's-
34 people could be elected, as far as I read this. Or maybe there's 34 choices.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my God, they did double columns. That's what they did. Oh. Have you seen this? You should see this. Oh my God, this is going to be a train wreck.
I think it's also been said that fairly recently that Ellington had more than 13 items in a referendum. So it's been done. And John has been in touch with our registrar of voters and is going to continue to work that problem with them.
If I could comment about this, the Simsbury questions, add up to over 800 words. The questions that are submitted here are less than what we submitted, are less than 350. You have cut it down to in the neighborhood of less than 300 words. It will easily fit.
Okay, but that's enough from the audience. Let's get this job done. We got a lot to do. Okay, so going back to the, thanks, Jason, for reading the thing. We don't have to go through that anymore, but, so anyway.
So, with the correspondence having been received, is there any that you have received in support of any of the proposals?
Well, I think the first one I read was kind of in support of it. They were saying that we shouldn't.
They started out by saying, don't go forward with any of these.
Yes.
So I would move not to move forward with any of the proposed charter questions as presented.
Yes. Are you serious?
Yeah,
Are you going to make a motion?
I did.
Is there a second? We're hearing no second. We're going to go forward.
Yep.
So, in parentheses, number 1, the first question we're going to vote on whether it should be on the ballot or not, and if we want to change the words, we can. I think it should read, shall the charter be amended to include a specific Connecticut general statute numbers when referencing a Connecticut general statute? Yes.
Just a point of clarification. How are we proceeding with this? Are we, there was some, I think Andy had a different approach than you had. How are we determining, at what point are we determining the order of the questions?
At this point, we'll determine, we're going to vote on each question. And if first we'll vote on the words in the question. If we say, yes, those are the words we like in the question, we'll vote on whether we want the question to be on the ballot. Yes or no? Then we'll say, what order do we want it in? And we'll vote on that. The order, we can come back and change. We might, the order, once we, each ballot, each one we can, we'll suggest an order, but we'll mark it down and we'll come back, we can change the order at the end.
So am I correct in saying that the order will be determined before we leave here tonight? Is that
Yes,
correct?
if we get through all the questions tonight. Okay, back to parentheses 1. And would anybody suggest changing the wording of that?
Does everybody have a copy?
I don't have a copy, and I have no idea what that question
Number 1
is
you're
actually
Okay.
saying is
saying.
not what we have.
So
No, that's true, that's true.
can we take 2 minutes and run some copies for you
Yes, we
guys?
can.
Why did you give us this one then?
Because you asked for attachment D, you got attachment D. This
So this is what you're working off of then?
That's correct. No, not attachment D, this one. And you're going to give it to you to Xerox. And at the top in red. But you'll need that. Or you won't need it that much.
You don't have to collect them. They're official documents.
Somebody want to Xerox this?
I think Jason is.
Oh, Jason is, thanks.
Jason is.
I thought that the questions was what she was copying. That's
Well,
why.
they are the questions, they're just in a different
That's
order.
what I asked
Well, they're the
for.
questions that the
I asked
Charter
for the
Commission
questions
gave us.
And attachment D is what I asked.
And this,
And that's your
This is my
your
question.
personal question
Yes.
changes? All right, let me see.
So we need those two.
You've got to go into B now and look at what the commission has recommended versus what you have here.
well, the commission recommended in attachment D is what the wording of the questions.
In B.
Indeed, these are the wording of the questions here. Attachment D.
Okay. Okay, all right.
That's what we,
That's what you guys submitted, and then what he's got.
he rearranged them
In his order.
and modified the word for it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, continuing right along. Does anybody want to change the wording of parentheses 1?
You're going to make that into 2 questions, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
Okay.
Two-sided or one-sided?
It is two-sided. Here's the other, somebody can run a copy out of mine.
How many did you run?
I ran 30.
30?
Well, we got the first 7.
Okay.
Do that at work all the time.
If there's no changes to parentheses 1, I move that we accept the wording of parentheses 1. Is there a second? Bob?
You will also have to move that the Board of Selectmen, you'll have to vote on whether or not to accept the charter amendment, not just a question. So you can vote on the question.
Okay, all right, that's good.
The
So,
charter amendment as represented, you can reference attachment B to do that.
okay.
That's where the full text of the amendment is.
Well, could you give us the wording of the motion then as it should be?
The motion would be the movement to move to approve the proposed amendment of the charter to include specific references to the Connecticut General Statutes, as outlined in the final report of the Charter Revision Commission. And then that same format for each one of the questions, but it's more than approving the question. You're approving the proposed charter amendment that we see in the Charter Revision Commission. The first one, we can't reference a specific section because we have all the number of sections. So we just said
The charter amendment. Okay, so starting again, I move to approve the charter amendment to, in this case, it would be to
include specific references to the Connecticut General Statutes throughout the town charter. The other ones are a lot easier to state.
okay, and you'd say, and accept the wording as presented in parentheses 1?
Sure.
Okay.
The wording of the ballot question.
Thank you, I got it. I'm okay. I got it.
Do you have it?
I got it.
Oh, could you read it?
Approve the charter amendment to include specific references to the Connecticut General Statutes throughout the town charter and accept the wording of the ballot question as presented in your parentheses 1.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Is that a 5-0 or is that a 4-1? Come on, Jason, give me something. Come on.
Yes.
That's a yes?
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Parentheses number 2. And the question would be, shall Charter Section 6-6D be amended to change the title of the town treasurer to finance director? And any discussion on that? Okay.
I have a question. So we're amending the references to the town treasurer in 6-16, and that's what the question says. Shall Charter Section 6-60 be amended to change the title of the town treasurer to finance director? That doesn't capture references throughout the rest of the document where the town treasurer is to which the town treasurer is referred.
Okay, Bob has something to
Those
say.
changes have been made in the attachment C. There are 4 of them. And they've all been made. If question number 2 were to pass, the town charter would be changed according to attachment C, including all cross-references from town treasurer to finance director. I believe there's 4 others.
So how do the voters know that that's what's happening?
Well, it's implied, if you change, the substantive change is to change the title of the position from town treasurer to finance director. The corresponding changes will carry through throughout the charter. The attachment C will be available to the public along with the final report. Each of the attachments has a different purpose. All of it relates back to the final report. If you read the final report, you will see attachment A is the original charge of the commission. Attachment B is the text of each proposed change. Attachment C are those proposed changes incorporated into the proposed revised charter. And attachment D is the proposed ballot questions that the Charter Revision Commission has provided to the Board of Selectmen for its use. We're not bound by them under the statute. The form of the questions is a function of the Board of Selectmen. But in attachment C is if this ballot question were to pass, attachment C references finance director with the current charter, unamended charter references treasurer.
So can you, in amendment, attachment A, can you point me to where the charge is? Is it the introduction?
Attachment A is the resolution that was passed by the Board of Selectmen May 17, 2018.
Right. So I'm in the final report. Where is attachment A?
It's right after the final.
Yeah, what page is that?
It doesn't have a separate page, but if you look at page 13, it's the document following page 13.
Must be different page 13.
It's right after this. Charter, revision charter.
Should be separated. So did we do anything with Muni code in here? I don't think so.
You mean in the resolution?
No, in the final report.
I don't know how you mean it.
I don't think we did. We did change, we just approved parentheses 1, which adds the numbers to the Connecticut general statutes, but we didn't use any Muni code other than that.
Wasn't that an OPM mandate?
No.
That was not?
That was not. That was a recommendation from the Charter Revision Commission.
To use Muni code?
Yes. Anyway, we're talking about parentheses 2, and you have and Bob explained that by saying that change the title of town treasurer, that there's 4 other places in the charter where that's used, and it would be changed if this was voted in. Would you like to add "and throughout the charter" to this question?
That would be good. I think that would be more transparent.
All right, I don't have a problem with that. Is there any more comments?
No.
Okay,
So at the end, you're going to just simply add...
and throughout the charter.
And throughout the charter.
So, I'll take a shot at this, Bob, and if you would improve my motion. I move to approve the charter amendment I move the charter amendment of section 6-6D to amend, to change the title of the town treasurer to finance director and throughout the charter. Is that sufficient?
I think so.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now,
You didn't vote on the question. That motion that I just heard did not include the ballot question.
oh, okay,
Could be a separate motion, probably should be.
okay,
Probably
okay,
should or should not be.
Should be,
okay.
two separate issues.
I move to approve the ballot question presented in parentheses 2 that reads, shall charter section 6-6 be amended to change the title of the treasurer to finance director throughout the charter. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, parentheses 3, sealed bids to be opened publicly in the town meeting. And the question would read, shall Charter Section 8-3 entitled General Provisions be amended to add a section that established sealed bid procedures requiring bids to be submitted to the town clerk and opened publicly? Any discussion on that? Jason?
Why is it that we're putting policy into the charter? There is existing policy on that.
This is a question that was given to us by the Charter Revision Committee. We're going to either vote on them, vote them for them, or vote against them. And it sounds like you want to vote against it.
Well, isn't that language that would typically be involved in the details of an RFP?
I'm going to comment.
If you'd like to comment.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be, but my observation is that there hasn't been any strict adherence to that since I've been on the board. And I think to have something memorialized through the charter that directs that to happen so that there is never any feeling by anybody that there was not a proper bid procedure that someone had in the bid. So if it's in the charter, you have to follow that. There aren't exceptions. It goes to the town clerk, which the town clerk can then time and date seal bid, because most bids have a time on them and a date when they're required to be in.
Aren't bids that are in violation of policy appealable? They're at the state level.
Excuse me, what was that?
Bids that, so if you set bid parameters by policy, which is typical, and that policy is violated, the award of that bid is appealable. But I just had a lengthy conversation today that had that exact circumstance, that I was actually warned that, you know, what we had inadvertently done could be appealed by an aggrieved party. So I still don't understand why it needs to be memorialized in our town's constitution instead of by policy. Well, you know, we need to enforce the town policy, but
Okay, but you're saying that if we put in the town charter...
no, I'm saying that we don't need to put in the town charter.
I know you're saying that, but is there a problem with putting it in the town charter?
Yeah, you can't change it.
Okay.
So, for example, if, and what isn't clear from the question, but it is clear when you actually dig into the charter language, is that bids would be opened in the town meeting room at town hall. So, what happens in the event that we discover there's asbestos in this room and we have to vacate the room for remediation? The only place that the charter then allows us to accommodate the unsealing of bids is in this room, which at that point would be unavailable. If it's a bid requirement, that allows for consideration to say like, okay, we're going to open it in the first selectman's office, we're going to open it in the town meeting room, we're going to open it at the annex. Wherever those specifics for that bid are, they can still be received someplace, but to facilitate a location certain, this is all policy stuff. This is way more in the weeds than the charter is supposed to get.
Interesting, that's what I said a couple of meetings ago, but Bob, maybe you could answer that. If it's in the town charter that we have to, well, it has to be opened in the town meeting room, and for some reason the town meeting room is not available, could we open it somewhere else?
If the town meeting room, this is the town meeting room.
Right.
If this room were unavailable, then the board of selectmen would designate another room as the town meeting room for purposes of holding town meetings, which would tie back to the charter language.
Sounds good.
Still sounds like policy that's being written in the stone.
But I think it would make people happy. And again, we're going to vote on this. And that's the beauty of it. We're doing something to give to the voters. It's their choice. They can do what they want. And if they say no, that's fine. More power to them. Okay. Further discussion.
Hey, Bob, one word. Did you have a second on the motion? Because I don't know. If
Well, we didn't even do this motion yet.
I thought you made a motion, and then I...
Not yet. Not on parentheses 3.
Just checking, that's all.
Just checking. Okay. If there's no more discussion, I move to approve a charter amendment of section 6D, no,
8.3.
yeah, section 8.8-3 entitled General Provisions. I guess that's all I really have to do. Is that correct, Bob?
Well, you could, in the motion, say to add a subsection establishes civil procedures
Okay.
to make it specific, because 8.3 has a lot in it.
Did you get that, Peg? Could you read it back?
Okay. To approve the charter amendment of section 8.3, subsection whatever it will be, I'm sorry. Don't have it in front of me? I don't have it in front of me.
To add a subsection.
Okay, to add subsection regarding bid procedures, and that's as far as I got. Are you going any further with the motion, or is that it?
You could add as recommended by the Charter Revision Commission to each question, because then it would be specific. You're talking about what they recommended.
I think we're going to do that overall in the beginning.
So I'm not gonna do it.
Okay, so the motion is, I move to approve Charter Revision, Charter Amendment 8-3, add subsection bid procedures. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Jason?
No.
And then I move to approve the wording of section parentheses 3 to be, shall the charter section 8-3 entitled General Provisions be amended to add a subsection that establishes sealed bid procedures requiring bids to be submitted to the town clerk and opened publicly. Is there a second?
Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay. Town administrator, parentheses 4, and what the question is shall proposed new charter section 6-8 entitled Administrative Officer be added to the town charter to establish a professional administrative officer position. Is there any discussion?
I think Jack Manette made some important points with that. However, I do believe that a job description can cover his concerns. So I think this is a valid addition to our charter.
Jason, do you want to say something?
Where to start? This proposal is in conflict with other portions of the charter, which specifically talk about the first selectman being the chief administrative officer. I think Jack is correct in his letter indicating that that would create confusion among staff as to who specifically they need to report to. From a policy consideration, I have a hard time voting for a position that will cost not less than $130,000, including fringe benefits, at the same time that we can't figure out how to fix the fire district and we can't figure out how to pay for JV sports. We're committing finances that we don't have. And I do have to say I'm grateful for the Charter Revision Commission carving out a job description that I meet, but I'm not in favor of this as a requirement. I think that because it can already be done through existing policy, and the Board of Selectmen could choose to do it as a budgetary item, and if it was approved by voters at the budget referendum, we could already fill it. I think that's sufficient.
Is there further discussion?
Well, what Jason says is right. The only problem is that I believe that if it's not in the charter, it will never happen. So I believe that if we truly believe we need a town administrator as a professional who will assist the first selectman, that it should be in the charter, just like the chief administrator, our financial officer, and the first selectman, and so on. So I really believe if we want it, that's the place to put it.
Everyone that I have spoken with or have spoken to me are, one, excited about having this on there, that they think it's about time East Windsor has done this, and they feel that there'll probably be some payback on this by changes that could be made to improve the overall government of the town.
Steve?
I don't think the guy has enough power.
That's true.
Okay, I don't think he has enough power because all your departments have to answer back to you. This guy could go in and say, I want this, or whatever, and they could just say, same thing as the police chief says to you, I don't have to talk to you. I answer to the first selectman. So I don't think the guy has enough power for that, in that job. I think he needs more power, where people have to answer to him.
I think, Steve, if the position is there, you can make that power through a job description.
We put the job description in the charter in this proposal.
Say again?
This proposal puts the job description in the charter, which is another objection to it, is because it doesn't give any flexibility for the first selectman to craft the position as fits their administration.
But it can be modified, Jason, through...
Every 5 years.
No, not the charter, but the position can be modified through a job description that elaborates on what's in the charter.
It can be specified, but you can't reduce those things that are spelled out in it.
True. True.
And incidentally, some of the things that are spelled out in here, like the research component, you don't need a staff person at all for it. You just need to pick up the phone and call CCM, and they will do that research for you. And we pay them every year for that service to be available.
I've done that. But there are some things that they would not research for us in the manner which we want it.
Why is that?
Well, when I asked them questions and got answers, they came back with some generalized information, and they also said if you look in these areas, you can find additional information. So I went out and did some more research that was more specific to my question, and it answered what I wanted better.
So how often in the proposal, the compensation and benefits of the administrative officer shall be, that's not the right section. The term of office. Where's the term of office? The town administrative officer shall serve for an indefinite term or such other term as determined by the Board of Selectmen. How frequently can the Board of Selectmen revisit that term of service?
Whenever they want to.
So it's really for a term established by the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
An indefinite term just means they could carry over, but it could also be that every 2 years, the board flushes the town administrator and we go back out looking for a new one.
Could be in 6 months they flush them.
Well, I was thinking party changes, but yeah.
Okay, I think that whether the town has a town administrator or not is a big question. And I think that the voters deserve to answer that question. And I think by putting it on the ballot, they can answer that question, whether they want a town officer or not. And I'm not too concerned if I had a town officer, administrative officer, we'd work together, just like the chief and the deputy work together, just like the superintendent in schools and the each school's principal work together. You have to work together. And if you're not working together, then just like you say, we'll get rid of that town administrator. So I think that's what you need. And at least let the town vote on that. And I think if you look at the town in general, you'll say, gee, you have the police department that has a chief and a deputy. Both of those are getting paid like $130,000 a year. You have the Board of Education, where you have a superintendent that's getting paid a great deal of money. You have the principals of all the schools. You have vice principals of all the schools that are getting paid a lot of money. Here in this town, we have me, that's the chief executive officer, gets paid $75,000 a year, and you'll probably get what you deserve. You need a professional in there to really carry the town along. But that's my opinion. I think the town should vote on this. So I think I'll make a motion. I move to approve the charter amendment to add a new section 6-6H entitled administrative officer. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Is that a good motion, by the way?
I like as recommended by the Charter Revision Commission after each one.
Well,
It makes it, but if you want to do an omnibus statement,
all right.
each of these
All right.
motions, that would be my recommended change, but you're the maker of the motion.
Okay. Steve?
Let the people vote.
Okay. All those in favor? Is there a second?
Wait.
Yeah. Did you second it?
Charlie seconded it.
Okay.
Did you vote? Did we
No,
We
vote?
didn't vote.
I asked for a second. This is in even their report's in conflict with the charter. The commission's intention is to create a position that has direct supervisory responsibility for all personnel reporting to the first selectman. That is in conflict with the charter. I'm ready to vote.
Okay. All those in favor?
No,
All right.
All those opposed?
yes, no, I'm opposed.
I think we got
By the way, if this passes, I'm going to apply for it.
Duly noted.
130,000.
That's what you're going to ask?
That's the going rate.
Going rate. But with your experience, maybe we'll only give you 115. Okay. Parentheses number 5. A narrative for supplemental appropriations. And the question reads, shall Charter Section 8-6 be amended to require a narrative supporting the need and cost of supplemental appropriations be filed with the town clerk? Is there any change to the wording of that?
You're going to leave the 7 days in there?
Yes.
Yeah, as it is.
As it is.
Okay.
All right, then. I move to approve Charter Amendment 6 amendment to Charter Section 8-6 be amended to require a narrative supporting the need and cost of supplemental appropriations be filed with the town clerk. That's more than I need. Can we have it? Is that a good enough motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only discussion that I have...
I need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Second.
All right.
The discussion I have, would like to raise, or point I'd rather raise, is one I've raised before, and that is, if the narrative, if the supporting information is not adequate, then what happens? And in the past, we have said nothing happens. That's wrong. Usually, and you know, my usually is from the private sector, if the supporting data is not adequate, it is rejected and sent back until there's adequate supporting data. And we're not saying that here. And I think that's a shortcoming in this particular section.
I agree with you, but I think if we put the details of how we'd ensure that that narrative is adequate to justify the expenses, it would be too much to put in the charter. I think, well, let me finish.
Go ahead.
I think by doing this, by having the narrative given to the town clerk 7 days in advance, and then people can read it, and probably will be put on the website, and come to the Board of Finance meeting when they discuss the supplemental appropriation, and they could say just what you said. This is not sufficient information. And if that would give the Board of Finance an option to agree with people. And if there's an audience out there saying that, maybe that would help enforce it. And maybe if that happens over and over again, we could make a procedure or an ordinance that adds to this. So I would go with what we have and not make it overly complex. That's my opinion.
It's clear to me that the Board of Finance has the final say on what we spend for money here in town. It's just that I think the Board of Selectmen has some obligation to understand what the backup information is and whether it is indeed supports the activity that is being, where funds are being requested. And I don't know how those two twains meet.
Jason?
This is another instance where we're putting something that ought to be done by policy into our governing document. The Board of Finance absolutely could require this. The fact that they haven't isn't justification to put this into the charter, it's justification to run for the Board of Finance. This is, time and again, we're putting things in here that don't belong. And I just think that no matter how well-intentioned that may be, the appropriate channels are to work through the processes that are in place. In this case, the Board of Finance should be the determinant of the financial decisions on the part of the town, and they should set the parameters by which they need to make those responsible decisions. If the current system is as it is working for them, then that's what they need to be doing. If the current circumstance isn't working for them, then they should change it. We shouldn't be codifying it because we're unhappy with the processes that an elected board decides to make.
Jason, I don't want to beat the dead horse that I've beaten forever, and that is I will never get over the $250,000 splash pad or the $200,000 bathroom. I just will never get over that. The Board of Finance had an opportunity to ask for backup on that. I went back to Public Works a couple of times after we said yes on that. We all shook our heads on that. I was shaking my head. I don't like it very much, but at any rate. And they really didn't have any, they're good people. They really know their business. But they didn't have any supporting data on either one of those things. They really didn't. They had some pictures. They did not go out to, I don't know who, the city of New York and say, what's the cost for the 500,000 splash pads you have in your city or anything like that. They didn't go out and ask the town of Ellington. They've got a concession stand, little building over there. Didn't ask, what did that thing cost? We should have done that.
Well,
you don't do things in the blind like we're doing here. And I'm not knocking the Board of Finance. They got a tough job. But what I am doing is knocking the fact that at least in 2 cases there, okay? And I'm not making a mountain out of this molehill. But we didn't have a damn idea as to what the hell we were buying and what we were paying for. Now, in talking to Lynn and Joe, they said, hey, Andy, you know, if you force us to put numbers to it, maybe we're 20% high. But we had to do that because we really didn't have much definition. Nobody sat down and wrote a spec. And again, that goes against what I have done forever, and that doesn't make me right, okay, or the system wrong. But this puts it in as a requirement. And you're right, we could have done it. The Board of Finance could say, I want to have a rigorous cost backup sheet for everything we do. But we don't do it. So this now requires some of that. And I'm still a little disappointed because although the cost rationale sheet comes in, I don't know how we as a Board of Selectmen say, I don't like that, it isn't good enough. It isn't good enough because the Board of Finance can say, but it's good enough for us, and go on.
And this also happens to be an area that many people said to me, you know, why the heck are we doing this? You know, what is this, why is this costing this much? And you have no response to them. A lot of people are concerned about this, and if they haven't, Board of Finance hasn't done it up to this point, this requires it to some degree, so that it should be done. It should be a no-brainer to do that when somebody wants money.
So to me, this proposal that we're talking about, codifying a requirement for a different board to make their own determinations, is a response to, quite honestly, you gentlemen voting for something that you really wanted to vote against when you were brand new. And that's, brand new is totally in bounds, I get that. However, that doesn't mean that the concept had never been talked about before. It had been talked about for a while. Melissa came to us first, then she went to the Board of Finance. We're going to make a fundamental change in the document that affects the operations of a separate elected board based on what you term as 2 cases that you didn't like the outcome for, that aren't even really our purview.
And
Okay, wait a bit now. I don't want to back and forth here.
Okay.
And what I have something I'd like to say in this regard, and I think that you're getting, this conversation is getting down into the lower level, when really, in my opinion, what we're doing here is giving the public information available to them to help govern the town, and to be back and forth about what happened when, who to who, to the board. I think it's really missing the point of this whole change. All it is saying, put the information with the town clerk. That's all it's saying.
So you're absolutely right to bring it back to the question of transparency. But even this isn't doing it right. This is requiring that narrative be present to the Board of Finance, who are elected in their own right and have conversations.
No, it's requiring it be put in the, given to the town clerk.
Before the Board of Finance acts on it. It properly should be before the town meeting acts on it. Even that, we're micromanaging another board. If you were to move forward with this as a concept, and you can make an argument for it, I grant you that, but it should be that that information is submitted prior to action by the town meeting, not before an elected body.
Is there any further discussion? All right, I move to approve the charter amendment to section 8-6.
Excuse me, you guys did that, I'm just waiting for a vote.
Oh,
You made the
Right.
motion.
And Andy
Andy
seconded.
seconded it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Joe. And then I've got 4 pages of notes.
okay, good. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. Parentheses number 5, narrative for supplemental appropriation, I move we approve for the ballot the wording shall charter section 8-6 be amended to require a narrative supporting the need and cost of supplementary appropriation be filed with the town clerk. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Parentheses number 6. Separate town government budget and Board of Education budgets. And the question would read, shall the charter sections 8-5 entitled Submission of Budgets to Referendum be amended to require separate votes for the town government budget and the Board of Education budget on the budget referendum ballot? Discussion. Jason?
This is the worst idea of the entire bunch. And this is another example of codifying something that the Board of Finance can already choose to do. If they deemed it to be really the appropriate thing, they can already do this under the general statutes. They can have as many budget questions as they decide they want to have. To require this to be put into the charter, because the Board of Finance hasn't previously availed themselves of that, is not a reason, that is not a reason to put this in the charter. It's a reason to run for the Board of Finance. If you don't like how the Board of Finance operates, then run for the Board of Finance. Don't short-circuit the whole system to get your way. And what this is going to do is create a permanent division in the community that we will never heal from. This will be disadvantageous to property owners who may or may not realize it, but it will be terrible for the school district. And everybody knows that. And the notion that, oh, maybe the school district will actually come out on top is total fallacy. And everybody knows that too. This is intended to be divisive. I will never support this.
Okay. Anybody else want to say something? Steve?
I'm for this 100%. The town side always gets beat up. The town side always gets shortchanged, which is the townspeople who do the voting, who do paying the taxes to support the school system. From all the things I've heard here in the past few months about the way the school system is run, it's nauseating. Any business that operated the way the East Windsor school system operates would be bankrupt. Plain and simple. The only thing is they've got an open checkbook, and it's called the taxpayers of East Windsor. This way here, it gives the town side a chance. Maybe they might want to vote for a little more than 2%. If it's going to the town side, something that they will see and be able to feel, maybe that will work. The school system has to learn how to run a business because they're not doing very well. All the things that have been told to me, people sitting in this right up here, I can't believe the stuff that goes on. I'm for this 100% to split it. And you know that they could have done it. You know they'll never do it because they know what the outcome will be. And that's why they've never done it. It's never been done in East Windsor as far as I know, on anything. This way here, it makes it mandatory. And now people are going to have to make some hard decisions and make the right decisions on how to run a business. Government is still a business.
Charlie?
To me, when I looked at it, the Board of Finance has forever gotten two budgets, one from the Board of Education, one from the general government. So they get two different budgets. So the people should look at that as well. They're looking at each one of those separately. So I think the townspeople should be able to look at it separately as well. I never saw why it would have been combined when they get it that way. It's not logical. It's logical to have them separate.
Bob, you say one more thing?
Yeah.
You know, Jason says, this is dividing the town or whatever. We can't even force them into an audit. The state of Connecticut protects them, okay? They don't want to be part of East Windsor. They don't want us sticking our nose into their business. They don't want us to know where they're spending that money. And that's why I'm for this too. If they want to come together and be part of East Windsor, fine. I say no. But they don't want that. They don't want us to know where that
Don't
money's going.
speak for me, please, Steve.
I'm not talking to you, Seminelli.
You're speaking
But this is
for
the
me.
way,
and
this
that's
is the
the
way
problem.
I feel. I feel real strong about this because I don't like what I see is going on.
Okay. Jason?
So I have two responses. The first is to Steve's first point, and I think it's a philosophical difference, and we can have those, that's all right. He talked about the townspeople who do the voting, and if that's your perception on what an elected official should be thinking about, you're entitled to that. I disagree with that. I think that as an elected official, we're responsible for thinking about what is best for everybody that we represent. Young, old, voters, not voters, working, not working, homeowners, renters. The whole kit and caboodle we have to make decisions for. not just the people who can vote for us in November, not just the people who vote in budget referenda, not just the people who pay taxes. We are representing everybody who lives within our town borders. And I think that is a philosophical principle for me. And if you think that we ought to be only representing those people who vote, you're entitled to that opinion. I just am never going to share that. In terms of Charlie's point about the Board of Finance being presented with separate budgets, so the voters should vote on separate budgets, that also is a philosophical position that I can understand but fully disagree with. We have an obligation to think like one community. We are all in this together, and we're all better for it because somebody else who happens to be our neighbor does well. So I am too young to participate in the senior center. I'm also too young to have, well, not too young, but I don't have any children who are school age yet. But because we have a school district, I'm better for it as being part of the community. Because there's a senior center, I'm better for it for being part of the community. We have to think in terms of the totality and put the whole community front and center. That notion that it's us against them has to stop, and we cannot foster that by codifying it in the charter.
I disagree with what you said, Jason, in that, again, the budget, and that's by law, correct, that it has to be separate for the Board of Education. So you're saying to put them together, well, they get it that way. It's the only way they can get their money is by doing it that way. That's the way the Board of Finance looks at it. So it's not separating. They're acting on what they got from them. They act on what they get from the general government budget. So it's just logical that you vote on them like that. Let the people, you know, they have school, they're gonna make decisions on both budgets as to what they think they want to spend.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I move to approve charter amendment to Charter Section 8.5 entitled Submission of Budgets to Referendum. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
And I'm going to abstain from this one, just because I can. If I had to make a decision, I'm glad I don't have to make it. Jason has a lot of good points. I think the town, again, should be allowed to vote on this because it is so controversial. And when Jason says you're dividing the town, well, my gosh, someone came up on this table and threw money at the selectmen. That was divisive. The town was divided at that point. And Jason, you're saying that the town has to come together and be one. Well, I agree with you. But they weren't one. They were yelling at each other. This might force them to come together and be one. Maybe that what you said about we're all one town, and to look at the education and drill down in detail and understand it and get together on how we can improve it, and maybe have some groups outside the education system work with the education system. Maybe volunteers, I don't know, but or maybe I do have some ideas, but we could certainly do after-school tutoring, and maybe not necessarily at the school. So I'm gonna leave this up to the voters, and if the board had voted a different way, I would have gone with what they voted. So I'm abstaining from this. Okay, now I move that the wording of this question on the ballot be, shall Charter Section 8-5 entitled Submission of Budgets to Referendum be amended to require separate votes for the town government budget and the Board of Education budget on the budget referendum ballot. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I have one more comment.
One more comment.
So there is clearly a division in the community. To not acknowledge that means you're just not paying attention. And I fundamentally, at my core, believe that this will do nothing but exacerbate that division. I think that, you know, Bob, you echoed correctly my sentiment, but if the community is going to come together, it needs to start with this board. We are part of the problem that is driving that division, and this is going to make that a forever issue.
The board doesn't always agree with you, Jason.
I'm well aware of that.
Can we just go on to the next?
Yeah, let's go on to the next
All
one.
right.
Can I just have a vote, please, on that motion?
Yeah, okay, yes.
Please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay. Operational audits. And question, I'll read the question, but then we'll talk about it. Shall Charter Section 8-9 entitled Annual Audit be amended to require operational audits of town operating departments every 4 years? Discussion.
Do we know what the cost of this is?
Not exactly.
Do we have a ballpark?
I can answer that.
Okay, I would know. That'd be great.
It can be as little as $1,000.
For what type of audit?
Again, you have to specify what you want, and then you have a consultant come in, and then they'll price it for you. I mean, I've had audits that I've had outsourced for $5 million.
So in your opinion, if we were to do one of these $1,000 operational audits, that would satisfy, say, a department the size of the police department?
No,
So what would that cost?
I don't know what the depth of the audit would be. Until we outline what that is, we won't know.
About
Are you
something
afraid
like,
of doing these or something? I was so shocked when I got on this board that that was never done in town. I was really stunned because in business, it's done on an ongoing basis so that you can find better ways to do things. People that are in jobs and they're doing it day in and day out, they only really know what they know. And when you bring someone in like that as a consultant to go through it and audit it, it's not to look for a crook. It's to look for, are things being done in the best efficient process at the lowest possible cost? That's one of the things. And there's also some other things with it. But again, you have to specify what it is that you want to have done, and they'll price it out.
so what is it that we're specifying we want to have done here?
Going through the operation. This is not a financial audit. This
Right.
is an operational audit, very
Right.
different.
You said we needed to specify what we want to have audited. So when we're doing an operational audit,
All right.
what does this language suggest that we are specifying that it do?
We can be looking at anything from how people post their time, you know, how they're getting paid, where contractors and what happens with the contractors' money that they're being charged. Where does that go? There's
So-
a lot of things.
Look at
that are-
processes and procedures as an example.
So again, just following that example, because I think that we're talking about separate things here, and I really don't understand this. If, using the police department again, which has 28 employees all told,
26 sworn and about...
call it 30 employees. So they've got 30 employees. If we were to do an audit of just timesheets, would that satisfy the obligation for an operational audit, as this language is written?
I think, Jason, if I can answer that, I think the size of the audit, and the police department's probably, it's the biggest one,
Yeah,
maybe.
That's why I'm
next-
picking it.
Yeah, and then maybe you'd have to focus the audit according to the amount of money you want to spend. And maybe, so you maybe have to, in timesheets is a good example, say, I want to audit timesheets, I want to audit overtime, and say, how much would that cost? And they give you so I think you have to tailor the audit to what you can afford.
So there again, using timesheets as the example, the largest town-side agency that we have, if we were to be required to do an operational audit of our 3 largest departments once every 4 years, and we audited simply timesheets, does that check that box? Has an operational audit been completed there? If not, what would need to be done in order to satisfy what we're putting in the charter? I really don't know.
Okay, I think that depends upon how much money would be allocated for the audit. And what you would need to do is have consultants come in, meet with us. They'll tell us what their experience level is. They'll tell us where they see, the best benefit, and what areas to look at that would have the most impact to us. And then from there, you can decide, well, we want to spend $10,000 because we think that there'll be $20,000 in benefits by doing that. They're going to tell you that.
Okay, so again, if there is $1,000 is made available for an operational audit, and we want to do timesheets for the police department, and we can do that for $1,000, that satisfies the requirement of doing an operational audit of that department for
I don't think you do that for $1,000. I don't know what the depth is.
So, but that gets right
How
to
far back do you
that
go?
gets right to my question, that this language, however well-intentioned, is not clear in what the obligations are.
Well, you're not going to be able to do that until you have a meeting with some consultants, and they'll specify it, they'll outline what that is. Otherwise, you're writing an RFP and putting it into this, and you're not doing that.
And that's a good point, and it's also a concern that I have, is this is another example of policy being put into the charter that could be done by the policymaking board, which is us. And not once has this come up, ever, other than in the context of the charter.
Why didn't you do it then?
Okay,
This is your thing, man, you didn't bring it up one time in 2 years.
okay, enough of this back and forth. Charlie, let's not,
Can I say something
I don't
about
think this is a priority.
okay.
May I say something?
High priority.
They, more globally, these people are coming in after having audited lots of towns and cities. So they bring with them a lot of experience. So, as Charlie said, they can probably help you frame the audit if you can tell them what you're most interested in. The thing we're also ignoring, Jason, is the fact, I had that happen, in my department, but it really did it saved money. They had ideas that when we put them into effect, it actually saved the company money. Now, did that money we saved equal what it cost for that particular audit? It may. I'm not even sure about that.
Yeah,
but my point is, cumulatively,
Yeah,
if you keep on doing it, it gets better and better, and the cost of the audits get less and less. So at some point in time, it actually crosses over, and you actually get a benefit specifically from that audit.
I get that. My question, though, is there anything preventing this from happening already?
But it hasn't happened.
And that is not a reason to codify it. That is a reason to bring a policy forward.
Okay, Steve.
I've said it before, what Charlie and Andy are talking about. These people will come, they'll see things that the people every day don't. They'll probably save the town some money. But without it being in the charter, it won't be law. The finance board isn't going to give you the money to do it. Okay, they won't give it to you if it's not here in the charter. And that's why it has to be in the charter, to make things get done. And one thing my wife always said to me, she says, how come you guys don't do audits? You guys should be doing audits on what's going on down there.
Okay.
So it has to be, I believe it has to be done this way,
Okay,
to make it mandatory.
I'd like to make a motion then. I move to approve Charter Amendment to Section 8-9 entitled Annual Audit. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
And I'll vote no also. I'd vote yes if it was 10 years, but not 4 years. Okay. Yes?
Did you vote to approve the question?
I just about to do, I realized that.
Oh.
I move we approve the question as worded. Shall the charter, section 8-9 entitled Annual Audit be amended to require operational audits of town operating departments every 4 years. Okay.
I need a second, and I...
Oh, you need a second
I'm
vote.
sorry.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All those in favor?
We have a little discussion on it.
Sure.
The last time we went over this, I argued 6 years.
That's true.
And I thought we agreed on 6 years instead of 4.
CRC rejected your recommendation. They rejected your recommendation.
Can I comment?
Um,
When it was 6 years, we were looking at all departments. We reduced it to only 3 departments for 4 years. The other departments are optional for each Board of Selectmen.
is that what it says in there?
Yes.
I missed.
Yes.
Oh,
We changed it to the 3 largest departments, would circulate every 4 years. Because we took the comments that the Board of Selectmen made about both cost and about the frequency and the impact on the departments. We said that the codification in the charter should be the 3 largest departments over a cycle of 4 years as a way of dealing with those counter issues. So that's why.
and now how about the other departments?
The other departments would be set by policy directly by the Board of Selectmen. We felt that 6 years doesn't give you the benefit.
So sometimes you can set by policy, sometimes you're going to set by charter. Why is there no consistency with this?
The consistency is that in those areas where the town is grossly deficient, because the policymakers have not made the policy, the feeling was that that's exactly why the charter changes are made. For example,
That is a baseless point, Keith.
No, it's not.
Those 3
All
departments
right,
are.
let's not
grossly
have the back and
deficient.
forth.
There's no basis at all.
We don't
to
need
say
this
that
back
that's
and
the
forth
case.
with the audience. I'm sorry, let's one down, Marie's gonna go on. What do you think? This is being
No, I'm just
interesting.
saying, based upon what they said, I attended that meeting when they changed it to 3 departments because they couldn't come up with a 4th largest department. That's actually what was said. So then it-
Very interesting,
Right
I'm
down
glad you
to 4.
contributed, thank you.
You're welcome. You gave everybody else an opportunity to speak.
That's
Oh, I'll bring another good observation, thank you.
You're welcome.
Um,
I'd like to help.
I think, and I was voting on the wording, but this wording is not good. Do we vote on the wording? No. So it should say, shall the charter, section 9.8 entitled Annual Audit be amended to require the operational audits of the 3 largest town operating departments every 4 years. That's correct?
Right.
Okay. So, how, have we made a motion on this yet?
Okay.
Okay, so I'll retract that emotion. Not an emotion.
Wasn't the motion voted on?
The first one was.
Are we on the change or the question? So what was the last vote that we took?
Amending the charter.
Well, I'm sorry, can you read specifically what the vote was? Because I think we already voted on part of this.
The vote on amending the charter section was Steve, Andy, and Charlie for 4, you and Bob are against.
That was section 8-9, right?
Yes, it is. At least that's what I have. What do you have?
That's true.
No, I was just confirming.
That it?
Okay, but now we're on to the word. And I retract my
Okay.
motion because I'd like to make a new one. And this is the new motion.
Are you voting for this?
I voted against it.
So you shouldn't make the motion.
Okay, I won't make the motion. Would somebody else like to move to approve the charter amendment in parentheses number 7?
Do you want to make it, Andy?
Go ahead.
Excuse me, can I just ask a question? Are you back to amending the section now, rather than, or are you still voting on the question?
On the wording.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll make a motion
To approve the charter amendment.
to approve the charter amendment to require operational audits of the town's 3 largest operating departments. You need more?
Every 4 years.
Every 4 years.
So, could you read that back?
To approve the charter amendment to require operational audits to the town's 3 largest operating departments every 4 years.
And I think we should put in, I'd amend that motion to approve the charter amendment to Charter Section 8-9.
I'm lost here. I'm hearing amendment to the section. No, amendment.
Okay,
That's the motion that already passed.
yes, I misspoke. So I guess we have to, I would want to amend the wording, the motion on the wording. I move to approve, well, we have to amend we have to approve the question that's going to be on the ballot.
That's what I just gave her,
Okay.
right?
But the question on the ballot should mention the section that we're,
Oh, okay.
and you can say, you can, yeah,
So you could
almost
add
read
the
it
section to
verbatim.
it. If you had the section to it at the beginning, Peg, can you read it?
Exceptional.
Yeah, I can make that to approve the charter amendment to section.
8-9.
I'm sorry. Thank you. To require operational audits of the town's 3 largest operating departments every 4 years.
Right.
Yes.
So how would the question read on the ballot then?
This is the question. Okay, shall the charter section 8.9 entitled Annual Audit be amended to require operational audits of the town's largest 3 operating departments every 4 years?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was Charlie who made it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, who was the second?
I was gonna
Second.
Amy second.
Okay. Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
I'm in favor of the wording. It's good wording, Ed. All right. Now, parentheses 8, town council appointment. And the wording that I'm suggesting is shall charter section 6-B entitled Town Council be amended to make the appointment of the town council by the Board of Selectmen subject to the recommendation of the first selectman. Discussion.
So, okay. Yeah, okay, you're fine.
I'll make a motion.
Wait, I haven't discussed, I'm just looking for my page. What is this section? 660?
And also, that would be, it would be the first section in the red is the first in section, in attachment B, and the 11 in attachment D.
This just amends 66B, right?
Yes.
So this again gives the first selectman more than one vote in the selection of town personnel. I just don't think that's right. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
I realize that you've said that a number of times.
And I'm not even going to expound on that here. I mean,
Thank
that is the crux of it, is one man, one vote. There shouldn't be
No,
more than
and
one vote.
the crux of it, in my mind, is that the town council and the first selectman should work together. So the board of selectmen has to choose a town council that the first selectman can work with. Both the board of selectmen and the first selectman should have veto over a town council, in essence. And if you want to call that more than one, you're welcome to do it. But that's just the reality of the situation. I'm for that. But I'll make a motion and then you can say what you want. I move to approve the charter amendment to Charter Section 6-6B entitled Town Council to be amended to make the appointment of the Town Council by the Board of Selectmen subject to the recommendation of the First Selectman. Is there a second?
What's the duration of the appointment?
So it's up to the Board of Selectmen and the First Selectman.
So the next board of selectmen could appoint a town attorney for a 10-year period?
No, because that's, go ahead, Bob.
The language is coterminous with the Board of Selectmen.
Oh,
The
okay.
duration is 2 years.
It is not.
I don't think it is.
It's in the charter. So I'm looking specifically at attachment C on page 16. And the reason I raised that, Bob, is I thought it was in there, and it was not in this version.
Page 16, town council shall serve for a term coterminous with the Board of Selectmen.
Where are you?
I'm on B, town
Yeah.
council. Town council shall be attorney of law and manage the practice of the state of Connecticut. Town council shall be appointed by the Board of Selectmen upon recommendation of the First Selectman. Town council shall serve.
So this is what I'm looking at, attachment C, which is the proposed revision of the charter. That's the language.
This is what was forwarded from the Charter Revision Commission. That's the language in attachment C. The language in attachment
I'm looking at attachment C. So why is my language different from
I
mine?
don't know where you got attachment C. This is the document that was forwarded.
So this is the document that was given to us as part of our packet. So where did this come from? Why is attachment C different?
I hear what you're saying, and I haven't found that in attachment
Page
C.
16.
16.
Are you looking for that section?
Yeah.
Here it is.
I think I have it
So
here.
look at attachment C on page 16, the red line version.
Yes,
Where is the coterminous part?
it's not in there.
It's in attachment B. If you look at attachment B,
But attachment C is what we're voting on.
if you look at attachment B, the motion that passed the Charter Revision Commission for the Charter Amendment 6-6B is contained in attachment B.
Okay,
This is the charter with the revisions.
okay. Then,
The motions you are making, let me clarify something, this is very important. The motions you are making tonight are accepting the recommendations of the Charter Revision Commission. The recommendations of the Charter Revision Commission are found in their final report with attachment B for the specific language for each charter section. If somehow a different version of page 16 got collated into attachment C, that's a Scrivener's error. The motions made by the Charter Revision Commission are those that are contained in charter amended sections in attachment B.
attachment B.
So there's going to come a point in time someday when this stuff is available for the voters to look at ahead of the vote on.
That's right.
And what protection is there for when there is a Scrivener's error included in what the voters are looking at in preparation for their vote?
attachment B are the motions that were made by the Charter Revision Commission enacted.
So I understand what your point is, but there's going to be somebody, Paul probably, is going to look at the specific language that people are going to be voting on before they vote on it. It was, because we had 4 handouts tonight that were essentially the same thing. When there is a Scribner's error in the document that the public is reviewing, how is that error corrected?
It's corrected according to the motion that was made on amendment number 13, which authorized town attorney to correct all Scribner's errors as determined by the Board of Selectmen.
So in this case, if the language that I was quoting from in attachment C was the language that was included in what the public was reviewing, and that language passed, we would still put in language that was not in there.
The language that you're voting on tonight, you are accepting or rejecting the motions that were passed by the Charter Revision Commission.
I
The
understand.
language that was passed by the Charter Revision Commission is found in the specific amendment section as found in attachment B. Attachment C, I was requested to put all attachment B changes into the total charter, which is entirely appropriate and a good thing to do, to illustrate how those changes carry out throughout the charter. I have in front of me attachment C that has the correct language. I don't know how you got attachment C without that change.
Well, I tell you, I don't have a color printer.
And I don't either. And the one I have has the language that is identical to the attachment B language. I know that because I did it. I took attachment B language and I brought it into attachment C and I deleted the old language after the Charter Revision Commission made their final changes. There were changes that were occurring, as you know, throughout. And the red printed attachment C, I don't know. All I can tell you is this is attachment C that I sent to the Charter Revision Commission.
So again, if somebody reviews what is the language that's in attachment C, and the intention is for it to be in attachment B, and the vote happens.
The vote of referendum?
Yes. That's my question, not here, but for the few people who actually will take the time to read chapter and verse all of the changes. If there is wrong information included in that, and the vote passes, is that what goes into the charter? The language that was posted, or the language that was meant to?
The attachment B changes. The changes that are recommended by the Charter Revision Commission are those which are captured in the minutes of their last meeting when they voted on a series of changes. Those changes are included in the specific language in each document in attachment B. The final report references each of the proposed changes.
Okay, Jason, I think if you have questions on what attachment the language should be in, it's in attachment B. No question about it. That's the
And
Bible.
Before this goes to, this becomes the adopted language of the Board of Selectmen. You've already been through 7 of them. You've adopted the changes of the Charter Revision Commission for those 7 sections. Those, and you voted for ballot questions. Now, you're going to have to vote to send it to referendum, and I've given you documents to do that. What gets sent to referendum is those changes in attachment B, because that's where you find the specific language that was approved by the Charter Revision Commission. And, I have in front of me an attachment C with the correct language. So what was distributed for your consideration, I don't know. But here it is.
I looked at it over your shoulder. It is absolutely correct on your document. It's not on mine.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion.
No, you didn't do it.
What?
You just said two times.
I'm going to make a motion. I don't believe I made a motion for the town council yet, have I? Okay, I move to approve Charter Amendment Section 6B entitled Town Council be and I'll say it again, I move to approve charter amendment
You did
to,
make the motion earlier.
okay, was there a
It was
second?
seconded by Steve,
Okay,
then we got into all this.
okay.
So now you need it all.
Is there a further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. I move to put the wording on the ballot as follows, as shown in 8, parentheses 8, shall Charter Section 6-6B entitled Town Council be amended to make the appointment of Town Council by the Board of Selectmen subject to the recommendation of the first Selectman. Is there a second?
Second.
All those, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Moving on to parentheses number 9 and regular number 9. Increase the days to move a town meeting to referendum. And the wording would be, shall Charter Section 10-5 entitled Town Meeting by Petition be amended to increase the minimum number of days from 6 to 14 to collect signatures to adjourn a special town meeting to a referendum. Any discussion?
Yeah, well, are we on the recommendation of the question language?
We're on recommendation for number 9.
Okay. I have a question on the comment, the question language, but not on the content.
Okay. I move to approve the charter amendment to Charter Section 10-5 entitled Town Meeting by Petition. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, the language. I move to approve the ballot question as follows. Shall Charter Section 10-5 entitled Town Meeting by Petition be amended to increase the minimum number of days from 6 to 14 to collect signatures to adjourn a special town meeting to a referendum? Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I think that we should strike from 6, because 6 is not referenced in the charter at all. So that verbiage effectively
Okay. So we could
affects the
say,
question.
we could just say minimum number of days
214.
to 14.
That is more correct.
Okay. Then I'll retract my motion.
No, we can amend the motion.
Okay, well, I move to amend the motion, or why don't you move to amend?
I move to amend the recommendation in section 9 to strike the words from 6 and 6 parentheses. That's it.
I second the motion. All those in favor?
Of the amendment.
Of the amendment.
Aye.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. On to parentheses 14, automatic referendum at $200,000. And the question reads, shall proposed new charter section 10-9 entitled automatic referendum be added to the charter requiring referendum for all town meetings actions involving expenditures in excess of $200,000 in aggregate? Discussion. Jason?
This is also something that's unnecessary to put in the charter, as it's currently available, a remedy is currently available in the general statutes. Anybody can petition to have anything recessed from a town meeting to a referendum. this is not at all necessary to codify.
Okay.
And it would be costly.
Okay, further discussion, I'll make a motion, and we'll see what goes. I move to approve charter amendment to add a new section 10-9 entitled Automatic Referenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And further discussion, Jason, or?
No, it's completely unnecessary.
Okay. Steve?
The way I look at this, and we've seen it in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, but by doing this, this makes it law. We have to take it to a referendum where the townspeople will come and hopefully vote, and not, 10 or 15 people in this room to get $200,000. So I'm for this, where it gets the people out to vote, more people, not a handful of people.
Okay. Further discussion?
This really is another instance of we're codifying something where we don't like the outcome because it hasn't gone our way, and there's already a remedy available.
Well, let me say that I'm not going to give you, it's another example of blah, 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 but I will say, I think 200,000 is too little. I think
Is too what, Bob?
It's too little. It should be more, I know we talked about 1%, I would have liked that. But 200,000, I can't go along with that, so. For a different reason, but
My opinion is that whether it's 200,000 or 400,000, the number that people will submit will now be $199.99. If it was 400,000, it would now be $399,000. But I'm not sure it makes a hell of a lot of difference.
okay, well, if there's no more discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
No?
No, okay. Now, the wording. I move that the ballot wording shall be as presented in parentheses 8, parentheses 10, shall propose a new charter section 10-9 entitled Automatic Referendum be added to the charter requiring a referendum for all town meeting actions involving expenditures in excess of $200,000 in aggregate. Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
Okay.
Excuse me, Bob, were you in favor or against?
I'm in favor of the wording,
Okay, thank you.
not the motion. Okay.
That's okay, thank you.
Okay, parentheses 11, make police a town department. And the wording again is, shall propose new charter section 66I entitled Police Department be added to the charter to establish the Town of East Windsor Police Department as a town department. And so is there discussion on this issue?
So, I'm going to just write a little note here. So a couple of things. By making the police department, by adopting this proposal, we are consolidating the law enforcement body for the town into a political chain of command. You can make points about how the police commission is also elected, but they're not a political body. They're really not. We are absolutely a political body, and I think that introducing political considerations into policymaking or into the chain of command, which this organization in particular is very chain of command oriented, is going to cause confusion and it's going to cause friction. And I think that with the existing structure, their chain of command is clear. And I think they have an understanding that the chief gives the orders to the rank and file officers, the chief gets his orders from the police commission. That is linear. By adopting this, they're going to have to stop and say, okay, so for this type of directive, we get our orders from over here, but for this type of directive, we get our orders from over there, and the muddy waters become difficult for a chain of command based organization to operate. I think clarity is a big problem there. I also think clarity is a problem with the word choice, because it suggests that the police department is going to go away, or that it isn't really a thing, or that we're actually doing something quite the opposite of what the language is intending to do. I think that the verbiage of the question, and I know we're on the recommendation, but the verbiage of the question needs to be written in such a way so that it's clear to people that by adopting this, we're making a fundamental change in the chain of command that the department adheres to, instead of just saying, yeah, they're like public works. Because as I read it, yeah, they're like public works is absolutely going to pass. And that's what this language says. Except that's not what the recommendation does. So I think the language is very badly drafted in terms of reflecting what the recommendation is suggesting be done. So this is a case where people could be voting yes when they mean to vote no, or voting no when they mean to vote yes. So I have a number of objections to this. I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
I have to comment.
I just wait. Let me comment first.
Okay.
And then you go. In section attachment B,
Wait, what?
I think it's written correctly.
Final, is that the one that's final report?
Yeah. Yeah. Section attachment B 6-6I Police Department. It's you see it?
Yeah, I'm right on it, but
Okay.
even there, the first sentence leads to ambiguity. So the police department is hereby established, consisting of the chief of police and such other officers and employees of such ranks and grades as the board of selectmen may determine. So that already is saying that the police commission is not in charge of determining whether they need 2 lieutenants or 1, 2 captains or 1, 6 sergeants or 7 sergeants. Right off the bat, we're starting to make determinations on personnel actions that we don't know anything about. First sentence.
Yeah.
And then there's still a section in here pertaining to the police commission and to the chief in particular. I'm not even sure why the chief is in there when we have, we codify the position in A, we still include it in C, and I'm not really sure what that's intended to satisfy. Oh, and there, so the violation of rules established by the chief by any member of the department shall be punishable by appropriate disciplinary action, which may include loss of pay, suspension from duty, or removal. I'm not even sure that we can do that under the contract that we have with the police officers. Is that, can charter language supersede disciplinary and termination language in a contract?
No.
So that language shouldn't be in there.
The language is going to be in there, it's subject to the process and procedures laid out in the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, so if I'm trying to think of an example here. If the chief determines that there's a policy that he wants to enforce that says that every officer must have their shoes polished at roll call, and the contract says specifically the opposite of that you have to polish your shoes at least twice a month. Which
Contract controls.
the contract controls. So that language effectively doesn't do anything at all.
that particular example.
Yeah, and I get that there's examples and counterexamples and all that, but
But the chief could implement a policy that didn't have a specific reference within the collective bargaining agreement, and that policy proposal would be subject to impact bargaining. And that impact bargaining would result in some form of agreement between the police union and the chief, at the direction of the police commission in this particular instance. If there was an impasse, and that impact bargaining would follow the usual path to impasse resolution.
OLR ultimately.
Probably, although, the mediation before labor board, whatever. But the policy making, that establishes the chief as responsible for making the rules and procedures for the department at the, subject to the approval of the police commission, just as it is today.
Okay,
And
Jason,
also
could I
subject to
say something
existing
when
policies
you,
within the town.
Jason? I'd like to say something.
Sorry.
And I'd like to ask Bob. As Jason pointed out, the first sentence here says, "The East Windsor Police Department is hereby established, consisting of the chief of police and such other officers and employees in such ranks and grades as the Board of Selectmen may determine." So that means that the Board of Selectmen can determine how many sergeants and corporals and that the police department has?
That's the language that the Charter Revision Commission is recommending to you.
And our choice is to accept that language or reject that language, right?
You can accept that language, you can accept the recommended change, or you can reject the recommended change. You can't change the language. But I think what that's intended to mean is when the police commission sends its budget to the town to be included in the town's overall budget, usually there's a list of personnel, sworn officers by rank, and if the police commission said, no? Is there a personnel services budget?
Well, actually, I do recall in the charter seeing a list of officers and their ranks and how much their salary is.
That's in the budget, not in the charter.
Well, budget, I misspoke if I said charter. Okay,
But that was not language, that was language that was specifically recommended by the commission. That was not an oversight, that was not a typo, that was the language the commission is presenting.
okay. All right, so,
I just.
go ahead, sorry.
To what you said, Jason, and I heard you say this before, that, this is, making the police department politicized because we are, and yet I look at the police commission, they're all elected, we're all elected. 45 minutes ago, you said that the Board of Selectmen's here to represent the voters, the people who ran, you had a whole list of people. So we're not here to do anything political, it's here to do the right things for the town.
That was my philosophy, that wasn't a shared one. Steve disagreed with that, and again, you'll recall that I was making the argument that we're supposed to represent everybody who lives in town.
Right.
He was specific to the voters, and I prefaced that by saying,
Okay.
you can have that opinion.
But again, to what you said, we represent all the people that you said.
I believe that.
Okay, and I believe that too. And yet, for somebody to say that, making this change is going to do something politicizing the police department, when in fact, the chairman, respectfully so, is the chairman of the Republicans in town. So I think that's a little further in that distance than what we would be doing. I don't see that whatsoever.
So I also have made repeated objections to codifying language in the charter that restricts how another elected board conducts themselves, specifically to the Board of Finance. This also is muddying the waters with the way that an elected board governs their jurisdiction. In fact, we're taking a good chunk of their jurisdiction away from them. And I don't think that we should be centralizing this type of a workflow with this board. There's a reason why we have other boards that are elected with certain charges associated with them, And quite honestly, this is not broken. So I don't see why we're seeking to fix it. This is not broken. There haven't been issues that have risen to the top of the JI's story run to say that look at the dysfunction and the disarray. That has not happened. In fact,
But
the opposite of that has happened.
Bob had that as the CEO of the town.
And that's,
Okay.
Again, we're
So
making policy because people can't get
No,
along.
we
You can't
wanna bring-
legislate people liking each
But we
other.
want to bring people together. And I think
This
will
is
bring
not
us
doing
together.
that.
Okay,
In fact, this is doing the opposite of that. It's making the chief subservient to the first selectman.
well, we're not going to, now, let's not have a back and forth. The people can state their opinions. So I'll make a motion to approve a charter amendment to add a new section to the charter, section 6-6I, entitled Police Department. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Again, even in the language that's presented in, I guess it's attachment B, this is a power grab for the Board of Selectmen. This is something, we're fundamentally changing the way that something that is working works. This is bad policy. The recommendation is bad policy. The verbiage is incredibly misleading.
I don't agree with half of what you said.
Which half do you agree with? Let's start with that.
The one I do, I agree with is the wording here in attachment B, in that the Board of Selectmen has something to do with the ranks and grades of the police officers. That I think that should be part of the police commission, and so I'm not going to vote for this.
As a spoiler, neither am I.
Yeah, but in attention to say what I disagree with, it's just for you to say that the police commission's not political. I disagree with that totally. But that's okay. All right. So,
May I ask a question? That statement about getting the Board of Selectmen involved and looking at the rank of the police department, I think that's wrong also. Can we send the Charter Revision Commission back to look at that?
I don't think we can.
No. It's the language as is or not.
Attachment B, right?
I guess it's,
It
I'm
is.
hoping it's.
Okay, so,
This really had to do with the budgeting, when they come with their budget.
well, I think we have to vote on what it is. So, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
No.
No. Andy,
Well,
last chance.
yeah, I know. I think the good is overwhelmingly better than these words. I would not choose those words, but I think the intent of making the police department a department of the town is a good thing. And Jason has told me a bunch of times, and I agree, business is not like government. But this works in business all the time.
Okay, I think you made your point, but, all right.
So, excuse me. Steve, you were in favor? Thank you. Okay.
Okay, now let's look at the wording. In the wording, and we'll discuss it before I make a motion, it says shall propose new charter section 6-I entitled Police Department be added to charter to establish the Town of East Windsor Police Department as a town department. Does anybody want to change the wording slightly?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
At the end of the sentence, after town department,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, after the word department, I'd insert a comma and then say accountable to the Board of Selectmen. I think that is a more clear representation of what the change actually does. Because again, the language, as this question is written, I think suggests something different than what the recommendation is.
I think the way it's written is typical of all the other departments in the town. And I don't know why we have to add that to it.
So the question as it's written suggests that we're not going to have a police department unless you vote yes. That's what that suggests. So you gotta think about this as how, you know, Joe Sixpack, who comes in and votes sporadically but doesn't do a whole lot of research, is going to read that question. Should we have a police department or not? That's what people are gonna see. And the answer to that is not the same as what the question is getting to. The question is getting to an organizational and command structure, not whether or not we're going to abolish the police department versus retain the police department. So it is, as it's written, it is misleading for the average informed voter. You really think that's clear the way it's written?
I do.
You don't think that somebody is going to look at that and say, yeah, I think we should have a police department? And they're going to, based on that two-line sentence, they're going to understand the nuances between...
Added to the town charter to establish the town of East Windsor Police Department as a town department.
You think they're going to understand that nuance, that
they're not
by
a town
voting no,
department.
we're going to maintain a police department? They're right there.
All other departments accountable for selectmen.
That's why I want to insert the language.
Well, anybody that knows that would know that this department is accountable to selectmen.
That
I'm
is,
happy the way it's written.
that is egregiously misleading.
Another question, how many Joe Sixpacks do you think are in East Windsor?
I didn't say Joe Sixpack.
Yeah, you did.
You did.
Yeah, you said Mr. Joe Sixpack will come and vote on this and not read it.
You talking about me?
So how many Joe Sixpacks do we have in East Windsor?
I don't know, most voters are average information voters. You know, there's not a lot of people who are going to read a 60-page document to figure out what has changed and what hasn't changed. This is a misleading question. It does not reflect what is actually going to happen. It leads people to a separate conclusion.
I would like to add to that. You said accountable to the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
But in this, it also says that the Police Commission is responsible for general management and supervision of law enforcement responsibilities of the police department. So maybe we could say with the Police Commission duties including the general management of the supervision and law enforcement responsibilities of the police department, and with accountability to the Board of Selectmen.
I think you're making it too complex, Bob. I think that it's now becoming something that people will not understand. I think the way it's written is simple, and I don't think that that's confusing. You're making it a town department. And
What do you think the average voter would think the alternative to that is?
Status quo.
Status quo.
See,
That's true.
I don't think so. I think they're gonna see that as, I want police or I don't want police.
I don't see
It doesn't
at
say that at all
It
to
says
me.
Windsor
Okay, all right.
Police Department, we're gonna make it a department.
We're even referring
It
to
doesn't
it,
say we're getting rid of them.
we're even referring to it as, no, you don't, you have it there. Oh. I mean, I can count as well as anybody. I know what the vote's gonna be here, but I think this is very unfair to the voters.
Okay,
Even the merits of the proposal, you know, at least that's something for them to consider. But the question doesn't speak to the merits in my mind.
well, I think there's a consensus to leave it the way it is.
Yeah, I got that too.
Okay, so, I'll make a motion to word the ballot question as presented in parentheses 11. The ballot questions shall propose new charter section 6-6I entitled Police Department to be added to the charter to establish the Town of East Windsor Police Department as a town department. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed?
No.
I'll say no also.
Were you the maker of the motion?
Oh, then can I abstain?
You're a yes vote.
I'm a yes vote. Okay. On to parentheses 12, power to overrule. And the wording of the question is, shall propose new charter section 10-10 entitled Power to Overrule be added to the charters stating a referendum receiving 55% vote overrides a town meeting. Discussion. Yes.
It doesn't just override the town meeting, it's actions of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance.
Okay.
Well, wait a second. So that's also wrong in the wording.
The wording of what?
The question.
You're right. But we should change the wording of the question. That is section 8. Let's see what the question says. Just okay, this doesn't, the one that, the question that was given to us by the Charter Revision Commission just says, shall propose a new charter revision 10-10 entitled Power to Overrule be added to the charter as outlined in the Charter Commission final report. That doesn't get specific.
No, but you added a town meeting.
Yes, I did.
And make it specific, if you wanted to make it specific, you'd have to, in my view, you would have to add more action or certain actions of the Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance.
Or certain actions.
Vote override certain actions.
Would it have to be certain or just actions?
Well, no, because if that action was subjected to referendum, then power of overrule is not applicable.
Okay.
The threshold for this is also incredibly low. As I look at what the town of Ellington did, where this language obviously came from, their threshold is that at least 15% of the qualified electors of the town need to make the petition, whereas this is 2%, or 150.
No, 100, does it say 150?
150 or 2%. in the, well, the language I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's attachment B, huh?
Yeah, that's good.
I think the higher bar is 55%.
So the 55% is just for overruling the action, but other towns are using a much higher threshold to even get to.
I didn't know that until you read it, but yeah, I understand.
If there's going to be an opportunity to overrule the actions of an elected body, including the town meeting, then the threshold ought to be significant. 150 voters or 2%, and for whatever reason you have an infatuation with the number 2%. But that's a low bar. And that allows for exactly what you see happening in towns like in the state of Maine that have this type of initiative, which is where they keep overturning the overturn. They go back and forth because they just go, somebody doesn't like an outcome, they get 150 signatures, they overturn the last overturn. Back and forth and back and forth. That's a real example. The town of Maine spent 10 years doing that, or the town of Maine, a town in the state of Maine spent 10 years doing that. Every time there was an opportunity to overturn the last guy's action. So, to the extent that that's even going to be entertained, that threshold is way too low. I also think that it hinders the town's ability to contract, and I think it has personnel implications. It's great that they exempted public health and safety issues, and that provides some latitude, but there's a lot of the doings of running a government that this potentially hinders, or at least makes negotiations near impossible.
I hear what you're saying. I don't think I'll move. I'm not going to make a motion here. So
I move to reject this recommendation.
okay. Is there a second?
Come on,
Okay.
Bob, let's get to a vote.
I'll second it. All those in favor of rejecting this, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Say no.
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay, well, we got through that. Now, does somebody want to make a affirmative motion? You could start. I move to approve Charter Amendment.
Want me to do?
Sure.
I recommend to approve the proposed charter, new charter section 1010, entitled Power of Overrule.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Second. I'm
Is
sorry.
there a second?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Okay. Hey,
I didn't get a chance to, you guys are going so fast here, you know, that,
You're the tiebreaker, yay and nay.
you know, I wanted to say something about it,
oh, sorry.
you know.
Oh, well, we're not having completed our vote, so I guess,
I just want to say something quick. I think this was put in there in case, I don't know, what if you get a bunch of radicals on a board or something, you know what I mean? And it gets way out of hand. I mean it, it's happening around the country, I mean, you know?
They're laughing because it's considered that we're a bunch of radicals.
Well, that's not what I insinuated, not yet. But anyway, that's why it's here, I think, to, in case something goes awry and you gotta stop it somehow, you know? You're probably never gonna use it.
Put it in that context.
So anyway, I'm gonna vote for it,
okay.
just for some protection.
Now, this is a good thing. We're at the last, we've done our job. So we're at I didn't vote. The question, thank you. Okay. The question, well, we have a choice. And again, I'll let you guys make them. We can either say, shall propose a new charter section 1010 entitled Power to Overrule be added to the charter as outlined in the Charter Commission final report. We could say that. Or we could say, shall propose a new charter section 10-10 entitled Power to Overrule be added to the charter stating a referendum receiving 55% votes overrides a town meeting or certain actions of the Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance. So either one, specific or general.
I think specific.
Okay. All right. And so, do you want to make the motion? I think it's a good motion, though. I'll vote for it. Never mind. I propose the wording for the charter revision for the ballot for number 12, power to overrule, read, shall the proposed new charter section 10-10 entitled Power to Overrule be added to the charter stating a referendum receiving 55% vote overrides a town meeting or certain actions of the Board of Finance or the Board of Selectmen. Is there a second?
Second.
Jason?
I think this question, I think the wording of the question, but also the underlying intent, really is a departure entirely from the town meeting form of government. I think that if this should pass, we should just absolutely disavow that we still govern ourselves in a town meeting form of government, because we're really going to be governing by overrule. Somebody's going to collect signatures for any decision they don't like. The form of government that we've had for 251 years is over. I think that is what this invites. And I also think we should just say that, rather than skirting around and pretending that we're not really changing anything, but we're adding a town administrator and we're bifurcating the budget and all of these things. We should just say that we are done with our form of government and we're moving on to some other amalgamation that we haven't come up with yet. But we're doing government a la carte, and this is an example of that. This whole thing is it was entirely predictable. I'm done.
I view it as updating our government.
Okay. All those in favor of the wording? Was there a second? Did somebody second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the wording?
Aye.
Okay, I'll say aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay. Now the last. Question reads, shall Charter Section 8-3 entitled General Provisions be amended to add a subsection to allow the Board of Selectmen to transfer up to $15,000 from one department to another, but no more than $45,000 for all departments in the last 3 months of the fiscal year. Yes.
So, what's to stop the first selectman from putting in place a spending freeze and then saying on April 15th that you have a surplus in excess of $50,000, I'm going to take it and use it for what I want to use it for? Even though the first selectman in that example would not have allowed the money to be spent for the circumstances that it was approved for by the voters.
That's a hypothetical. I don't want to go down that path myself.
I see this as a slush fund for the Board of Selectmen. And quite honestly, that's okay as long as it's budgeted. If we put it through the budget process and there's a contingency that's set up for whatever, a communications line, which we actually had in the budget at a point in time. I'm not sure if it's still there or not, but if that was gone through the budget process for a dollar amount of whatever, to whatever degree, that's fine. But this is another example of consolidating power in this board or in your office. I know you're not going to be in it, but your office, that bypasses what the intention is actually. And there is opportunity for sure for abuse there.
I don't know about opportunity for abuse, but I don't think.
You can put in place a spending freeze, like that.
I didn't realize I could do that.
You can do it, we can do it, the Board of Finance can do it, that is totally in bounds.
Well, for good reason, I might put one. But
Exactly.
Well,
It is
I
there
suppose
for
you
good
could say
reason, but it could be abused. And this actually encourages that, so that you can use it for whatever project is most important to the occupant of your office at that time.
Jason, just so you know, I don't support this either.
Oh, no, I'm
But-
at this point pretty caffeinated.
Yeah. But I will say, why am I arguing with this guy when
I'm
I
just going
support
through
what
the
you're
chair.
saying? Okay.
3-2.
I don't think this is necessary, and maybe there are, if there's too many questions on this, and there probably are too many, this would be a good one to go. And so, with that said, I'll make a motion. So I move to approve the charter amendment to,
So you're voting yes.
oh, I'm not voting yes.
I
Thank
move
you.
to reject number 10,
Okay,
the year-end department transfers.
okay. I'll second that. Okay, discussion. All those in favor of rejecting it, say aye. And we have 3. All those.
I don't see any need for that.
Opposed, opposed.
I don't see any need for that.
Say aye if you're opposed. All right. Now, since we reject it, we don't have to worry about wording. Not on the ballot. Okay. So,
Public participation.
yes, we're moving on. Public participation.
I think you have, just point of order, don't you have to vote, you're voting tonight to send it to referendum, or is that not tonight? Because I thought that, I did that. Right?
We could
You don't have
vote,
to do it tonight, but it has to be done.
we could do it Thursday, or we could do it tonight. Is it,
It should be in the form of a resolution that captures everything you did tonight, setting the date of the referendum, the time of the referendum, and issuing a warning for referendum.
Why don't you do that Thursday? Get-
yeah, I think we're going to do that Thursday.
And that
Okay,
would show all of the questions, that resolution to send it to referendum, would show all the questions verbatim, that you approve of all the questions.
the referendum is going to be the municipal election.
But it's still a referendum. The election is the election of elected officials. This would be a referendum held on election day.
Okay,
Still a referendum.
so we will do that.
I
Yeah.
want to comment before you end your business.
Well,
Each of the questions we sent to you ended with, as outlined in the Charter Commission's final report. And as I understood it, you were going to have an overarching comment or statement that would cover all of these questions, because, as it's pointed out, there's not tremendous transparency in these questions. If people want to know the full extent of what they're voting on, they need to go into the report. And we need to say that somewhere in all of this.
yeah,
That these questions, these are the questions as outlined in the Charter Revision Commission's final report. Now, we have it on each and every question. You chose to remove it, so you need an overarching statement that says it's going to cover all of these questions.
yes. And what we have, here's the ballot.
Yes.
In the first box of the ballot, it says vote on the questions as outlined in the Charter Revision Commission
Okay,
final report.
that's all I'm looking for.
And that'll need to be in your resolution establishing a referendum, that you want the ballot to read just like that.
Yes.
So that'll be captured in the resolution, because it has to tie back to the final report, because the final report is a specific language that voters should be able to read and know that they're voting on. There's a question, you can't possibly put enough detail in the question to capture everything.
Okay. So further public participation. Marie?
Marie Penrice Road, Barber. In July, I handed you about, after I read it in public session, a complaint. It is now August, and I have not received a response. I was just wondering if one is to be anticipated coming from you, or if I should take further action.
Now that you brought it up, you did write that. And I wrote a response. Not to you, but I wrote a response, and I don't have it with me. But I will, at the next meeting, bring that response and read it.
So am I going to get a response as requested in writing from you?
I will read it, and I'll hand it to you.
Please have my name associated on it.
I will.
The written response to the document that I gave you. Thank you.
Okay. I have to say something else, though.
Go ahead.
I just thought came to my mind. I probably shouldn't say it, but Abraham Lincoln was so mad at one of his generals, and I've forgotten which one it was. It was some battle the guy went into in the Civil War and messed it up badly. And he was mad, and he wrote a letter to that guy, but he put it in his bureau drawer. And then when he woke up in the morning, he said, "No, I'm not going to send this thing." And it was wise that he didn't, because he needed that general in another battle. So,
Yeah, that's why I waited a couple of weeks before I did something. Because
Yeah.
I took it under consideration what I was.
but I will read it and give it to you.
What I wrote to you.
Yeah. Okay, more public participation. Yes, Paul?
I have something to bring up, but I have a question, maybe you can answer it, I'm sure you can. I was otherwise occupied on the Thursday when I believe you voted on the $232,000 for the fire district. That's where the money goes, the district?
Yes.
Not the department?
Correct.
Okay. And so you voted to approve that, I understood.
Yes.
And so that's going to go to town meeting, is that the problem?
No, we first go to the Board of Finance.
Oh, it should go to town meeting eventually if it,
If it passed the Board of Finance, it would have to go to town.
okay. Okay, thank you for that answer, because then I can bring up my point. The Broadbrook Library would like to request $50,000 as an added appropriation, and we promise not to use the money until next year.
Yes.
Apparently, that's what we do, because we have already stepped into cutting our policy on our fund balance, so you might as well keep cutting. We'd like $50,000 as an added appropriation, and we'll hold it until next year as well. And you can pass that to the Board of Finance, and we'll go on from there.
You don't even have to hold it.
Well, I was under the impression that that's what the agreement was.
It was, but that's only because of taxing. They were going to refund it. For whatever reason.
Well, we'll do the same thing.
Well,
We're willing to cooperate.
That's really big of you. Okay, further, yes.
Let me comment about the last question, $15,000. We currently have $40 million budget. So I don't know how many decimal places you got to go to define $15,000 or $45,000. Purpose of this question or amendment would be to give the chief executive officer a little bit of discretionary funding. At the end of the year, he has absolutely zero today. So we're asking somebody to come in, spend an entire year, call him chief executive officer, give him zero funding. There is no private industry that does that. The company I worked for, that individual had $75 million that he could allocate. So, come the end of the year, you need to do something that would be helpful for the town, and if the Board of Finance says, we're not interested, you can't do zip. This is to give you a little bit of latitude. We need signs telling people when it is to vote. There are no signs out there when it's time to vote. You're going to have an occasional referendum in the course of a year. You have no provision for signs out there. This is the kind of money that you would say, okay, for $5,000 we can get signs. Or if you want to communicate with the public at the end of the year. There's dozens of things you could do. It's such a small amount of money. 1% of our budget is $400,000. $15,000. So $4,000 is 1% of $400,000. So we're talking 3% of $400,000. 3% of 1% of our budget. And you think it's smart to say, we're not going to do this, this is a slush fund, this is stupid, people are going to abuse it. Give me a break.
Budget it.
We're talking about the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen being able to do something where they don't need the Board of Finance approval.
So budget it. You don't need the Board of Finance approval to spend money.
You don't know what it is.
You
It's
just
the end
need
of the
to
year,
budget.
it's the last quarter, it's the last quarter of the year.
Okay, that's enough of
Things
this
will
back
come
and
up.
forth.
Okay.
Okay,
Keith Gadala, I know Paul is hopefully being facetious in his comments. He's probably born out of frustration of trying to present budgets and asking for small amounts of money for that Broadbrook library. That library is one of the last threads that we have that connects us to our past. And also, it also provides a present benefit for people that need access to the library that don't have either transportation or the inclination to go to the other side of town to Ross Point. And Paul puts so much of his own personal energy into this. So I think we need to relieve him of his frustration. He shouldn't have to come begging, and I'm not blaming the Board of Selectmen, it's a combination of the whole budgetary process. These small, important organizational pieces need to get funded in this town. The expense is minimal. It's about our history, it's about our culture, it's about us as a community, and it's the kind of thing that pulls people together. And I know he's frustrated with his comments, and he probably doesn't mean any ill will to the Ross Point Fire District. I think I share his frustration. Oh, right.
No, I'm not going.
I know.
I'm staying away from that subject.
I think it's frustrating to
I
have
just
to.
want money.
He wants money, and I think he deserves it. And whoever's sitting up there for the next budget cycle should find enough money to make it possible that he can continue to work over there. That's my opinion.
okay. Further public participation. Marie, and then Marie.
Rita Susan Ken Rice from Forever. On the changes here, they're quite contradictory. And one motion you passed and indicated that you wanted to make sure that anybody that was coming forward with requests to spend money, do a detailed report, make sure that it's 100% accurate, on and on and on. But yet in the second breath, I think the last 3 meetings that were attended, the audit has come up and what the cost is going to be. The last meeting, it was told that there was audits being done around other towns and that you could contact them and get some idea of what it would be. That didn't happen. But I know when I sat on the Board of Finance and we were having, if you wanted to get excess amount of money put forth in your budget, like the fire departments and the libraries, they had to do a financial audit. And that financial audit, for most of those, and to include the library, was close to $10,000 to have that done, which they couldn't afford to do that, nor could the town. The one thing in the charter that I'm upset about, more so than a lot of the things that are in here, is the fact that that 2% that has been a bone of contention with this town for forever since it's been put in, and it costs us more money, and we've got people on the charter revisions that just said that $15,000 is not a whole lot of money, but because of that 2%, that library is the first to get cut because they're not a town entity. We've got additional finances being spent and mandated if these questions are voted in, that a 2% isn't going to cover. So which one of our town clerks, which one of our town treasurer, which one of our town clerks do we want to get rid of? And we're still not going to make enough money to cover what those expenses are going to be. And we don't know what the audit's going to cost. And I'm going to tell you, it's more than $1,000 to have somebody come in and do one of those audits. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, Rich?
Rick Lamorius, 16 Church Street. I hesitate to be critical of members of a board that put so much time and effort in, which I know the Charter Commission did. They met frequently. They spent a lot of time and a lot of energy. And for that, I commend them. But the best description of their proposals that I've heard is that it's a grievance charter. And it seeks to correct areas where individuals involved in the preparation of the charter, proposed charter, have lost political battles over the years. And it seems to try and take that out of the normal governmental process and put it into the charter, which is not where it belongs. The two most egregious recommendations to me are the bifurcation of the budget, because I believe the budgets are emblematic of a town as a whole. And as a community, we need one budget that balances all the different needs and desires. And that's what the job of the Board of Finance is. And the other one is the power to overrule. That's just so fraught with potential legal ramifications and difficulties that, and it just doesn't make common sense that after the Board of Selectmen hires a new town planner, that the citizens could petition to overrule that hiring, which it strikes me is allowed under this. If that is, that's just crazy to have the general public involved in personnel decisions. The Board of Selectmen has an obligation to negotiate contracts with town employees. Does the overrule then allow the public to overrule that agreement between the town and that collective, and that bargaining unit? It just makes no sense. There are a couple of minor things that make sense, but they're so minor that it doesn't warrant adoption by the community. And I am strongly going to recommend to anyone I can talk to that they vote against all the proposals in the charter revision.
And why wouldn't you vote for the ones that you say that are...
Because I think it's so, I don't believe anything can be 13 questions or 10 questions even. I think it should be maybe 2. But you want a document that makes sense from one part to the other, and this one doesn't. You want a document that makes sense from... I see conflicts in the adoption of the administrative officer and the first selectman. I don't think the roles are clearly defined.
So, but if you don't mind saying...
Again, oh, I could vote for the change of the name to the town, to the finance director. Okay, that's an insignificant change. If you really wanted to make a change to the finance department, and you really wanted to have a finance director that'd be in charge of more than 2 people, if you wanted to have a finance department, you should have made the change to incorporate the tax collector and the assessor under the director of finance. But that's not what's proposed. Even that doesn't make any sense, except that you want to satisfy somebody's resume requirements by putting it in there. The other ones, I
That's
don't agree
okay,
with
I
the
understand now where you're coming from.
What's that?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you want to, Saves you
Well,
money,
that's,
that's fine.
that's my perspective.
Good.
The other thing on this operational audit, I served on a town council for 10 years. We hired annually, we hired the auditing firm to do an annual audit. When we wanted something extra done, we simply negotiated with the firm that was contracted to do the town audit to do some extra work in a specific area. And that accomplishes what you want to do. You already have the power to do that. It's a very simple thing to do. When you hire the auditor, you ask them to do a couple additional things each year and stay on top of it that way. You don't need a charter provision to require an operational audit that's not even defined. What is an operational audit? How extensive is it? How much does it cost? You determine that. You determine it every year or every time you hire an auditing firm. You don't need it in the charter, and it makes no sense to put it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Further public participation? Yes.
Kathy Simonelli, Depot Street. First of all, I'm just going to say that every meeting I've come to regards to the charter, there have been a number of people in the audience, all people who are involved, knowledgeable about how the town runs, stay on top of the things that we do and how they work, and unanimously, there has not been a single positive comment for this charter, and yet that has been completely and thoroughly ignored by this board. That's frustrating. Also, having the public comment at the end of this meeting, after all the decisions were made, was also frustrating. And the attachments that you all discussed tonight were not available to the public, another frustration. I've asked before, will there be a full red line of the charter available to the public to understand the extent of the changes? I hope that that's the case. I hope that with that, there will also be meetings to allow the people to come and ask questions so that they can get answers to that, so they understand exactly what the language is doing, so that they can make informed decisions. Because most of the people don't understand how things run, how things day to day are done in this town. They go about their lives, they elect people to do that, and then they expect that it's done right. It's as simple as that. They don't know the details of how it's done, and they're going to need to understand that in order to be able to vote for or against this charter. And lastly, if Mr. Dearborn had ever come to a Board of Finance meeting or Board of Ed meeting, he'd know that the Board of Education has been extremely transparent in its budget, provides a line item budget to the Board of Finance monthly, and discusses that at their own meetings monthly as well. So we're not hiding anything, and we run our business that is dictated as to many of the things that we must do by the state and by law. So we don't get to choose those things. And I would appreciate it if you don't put words and whether I care and what I care about in my mouth or speak for my board ever again. You don't have that right. You're not in our heads.
I'll say what I want to say when I want to say it,
That's clear.
because I've heard you say things to me. And I-
Okay, let's not have a back and
Yeah,
forth.
I'm not
That's
getting
it.
into It's time to go home, boys. I'm getting up at 3 in the morning.
Yes.
One short comment. The documents are available. They've been in the town clerk's office since August 7th.
They should be online where people can get at them.
She is obligated to give it to anyone requesting. She will mail it to you. Anyone requesting, she's obligated to give it to you. I don't know if there's a fee associated.
I think
The
it
fact that
is,
they're
It will all
available.
be online. If it isn't already, I believe she has a digital file of all of it. So it's only a matter of her taking the time to do it.
Good. Should be done. Great.
Paul?
I'll make it real quick. The Brunswick Library does its best to make all the public documents available at the library for the public's convenience, so they don't have to pay any fees or deal with complications. It's a service, we don't guarantee it's perfect, but I have no problem getting documents off our website, printing them, and and making available at the library for people to see.
Yeah, and that's you should come to the town clerk's office, or you come to my office. We'll give you what's been given to the town clerk and put them in there. That's a good idea.
As long as the red line is red.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Then I'll print my own.
Okay. Yes.
Robert Leach, 39 Church Street, Chairman of the East Windsor Police Commission, and yes, I am Chairman of the East Windsor Republican Town Committee. 7 years I've served on Park and Rec, 12 years I've served on Scout Hall Committee, 12 years I've served as a Scoutmaster here in town. But I would challenge anyone that's served on any committee or commission with me, other than Republican Town Committee where that is purely political, but anyone would challenge to find where I've made a decision based on politics or my political beliefs. To say that the police commission is political is false. There's nobody that has ever made a political decision on that board. That board makes their decisions. I simply chair the board. It's the decision of the commissioners that run it. So that's two, in this case right now, we have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and yes, I'm a Republican on the chair. It's their decision. It's not the chairman's decision. So to claim that the police commission is political is really unfair and false.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further public participation? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good evening. I didn't hear what you said.
Steve, you said you're getting up at 3.
New York tomorrow.
So it's not it's a work trip, it's not a work trip.
Oh, yeah, it's work. Going to be in rush hour, down and back, and then
You're only back. I went down.